Good morning and welcome to the first in Jamaica Developers Association's series of webinars for 2024 and the eighth in the series. Today's theme is Climate Resilient Developments from Concept to Delivery. To get us off on the right foot, and I now invite our former chairman and director, and our current director, Deacon Reynolds Scott, invoke a prayer on our behalf.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Chairman Dayton. Let us go to the Almighty and seek His guidance on our seminar. Our Father, who art in heaven, Lord, we come before you this morning, thanking you for allowing us to live another day in your awesome creation. Lord, so many of our colleagues and friends, family members are leaving us suddenly, both the young and the old, Lord. So we ask that today you remind us that the very next breath we take comes from you. So as we meet at this Jamaica Developers Association webinar, we invite your presence and your spirit to guide the presenters, the organizers, other participants, Lord, and the general public who join us today. Father, we want to thank you for the consistency of our sponsors who continue to support these webinars with their resources and who realize the benefits, Lord God, from these supports. So, Father, as we discuss topics related to the development of our beautiful island, Jamaica, and as these are presented, Lord, let the information be enlightening so that we all come away with learnings that will enhance the process, will protect the environment. And Lord, ask of you today, especially guide us to find solutions to build affordable housing for all Jamaicans. So Lord, as we meet, ask a special blessing upon this young minister, Samuna, Lord God, a multifaceted ministry that he has. Ask that you give him clear vision on the way he should go to support the development process. Lord, give him the wisdom to employ them. Thank you, Father. Guide us in everything that we have said and done today. And may this be a successful webinar. This we ask in your name. Amen. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you very much, Deacon. And boy, I tell you, if you give up the development business, I think I know a church we can start. I know that you're in one very important one of doing a wonderful job. Thank you ever so much.
Bless you. Bless everybody.
Amen.
Amen.
The Developers Association recognizes that for our developments to succeed, the test of time, and of course our managers, we need talented and dedicated engineers, architects, surveyors, quantity surveyors, project managers, realtors, and of course, our lawyers. To that end, in 2004, JDA and the University of Technology instituted the Eustace Bird Bursary, named in honor of our first Secretary Manager, Mr. Eustace Bird. And the purpose was to assist deserving students in the faculty of the built environment. This year, we have now added the Joyce Bolton Bursary in honor of our second Secretary Manager and our longest serving Secretary Manager, 28 years. Part proceeds of these webinars have been used to fund the bursaries and grants that we give to some very, very talented students. And so I asked Akeem, we just made a presentation to 4 such students at the university and to the tune of $1.2 million. Thanks to you and the sponsors who have made this possible. So we thought we would share this highlight with you this morning. Akeem?
On June 5, 2024, the Jamaica Developers Association presented scholarships totaling $1.2 million to aspiring construction and architecture professionals at the University of Technology, Jamaica. This prestigious event took place at the Shared Facilities Building on UTEC's Papine campus. The Dean of the Faculty of the Built Environment, Dr. Lawrence Newville, was present to celebrate the achievements of the scholarship recipients. Among the honorees was Derval Clayton, a final year BSc construction engineering student who received the Eustace Bird Memorial Scholarship. This award, valued at $350,000, is named in honor of the first secretary and manager of the Jamaica Developers Association. Brittany Byfield, a final year student pursuing a BA in Architectural Studies, was awarded the inaugural Joyce Bolton Memorial Scholarship, also valued at $350,000. This scholarship was established in memory of the late Joyce Bolton, who served the association for 28 years. Dean Dr. Lawrence Newville praised the JDA for supporting professionals to tackle climate change, aligning with the university's goals of building resilience. JDA Chairman Dayton Wood admired the recipients' dedication, inspiring increased support from the association. Dr. Anethio Jackson, head of the School of Building and Land Management, celebrated the event as a testament to excellence and generosity, thanking the JDA for investing in UTEC students. Former Dean Professor Garfield Young highlighted the importance of JDA support, encouraging future students to seize such opportunities. Recipients Derval Clayton and Brittany Byfield expressed deep gratitude for the financial relief, enabling focus on studies and dreams in the construction industry. This event signifies the strong partnership between the Jamaica Developers Association and the University of Technology, Jamaica, empowering future professionals and supporting education. Thank you, JDA, for your commitment to educational excellence.
Thank you very much, Akeem. And thanks again to our sponsors and to those who have participated and joined in on our webinars. This is the only way we have been able to make this possible. So thank you again. So now we turn to our moderator for this morning. Someone that we have been just discussing, that I guess we have known for, shall we say, quite a few Bombay mango seasons, and but who is no stranger. She is Mrs. Eleanor Jones, international environmental risk management and development professional, with, and there's a typo here, number of years of experience, but I'm sure there must be something wrong because it says 50 years of experience, but we know that we'll have to check on that figure. But she's certainly been involved in environmental and social safeguards, disaster risk management, climate resilience, sustainable development. She's worked across the world, South Asia, Europe, North America, West Africa. And has consulted for agencies like the IDB, World Bank, and UNDP, served on numerous boards, been recognized with the CCRP Living Legacy Award, the nation's Order of Distinction, Bronze Musgrave Medal. She holds a Master of Arts from the University of Wisconsin as Chairman and CEO of Environmental Solutions Limited and President of SL Management Solutions Limited. And for us this morning, she has the JDA Order of Honorator to add to her accolades. Thank you, Eleanor, for your moderator, and over to you.
It's a real pleasure to share with the Jamaica Developers Association, because I certainly have worked with several developers, particularly, and I see your platinum sponsor, worked with them for many years. So it is a pleasure and an honor, and I'm particularly pleased that you have selected this topic. It's very timely because we know that the climate crisis, climate chaos, all the terms that are being used is real, and it has tremendous significance for us. I'd like to congratulate you also on the scholarships that have just been presented to the UTech students. UTech, of course, playing a major role in development. And as we develop professionals and we support them, we have to really bring on board in a serious way, in a more deliberate way, the issue of resilience, the issue of environmental soundness, because as we talk about climate change, we're talking about protecting our planet. And I thought it was interesting that the scholarships were presented during World Environment Week. And it was on World Environment Day that the Secretary General of the United Nations made the point that we're playing Russian roulette with our planet. We need an exit ramp off the highway to climate hell, as he said. The cost, of course, he was addressing all of us. And for us, you know, we're not G20, we're not G7, but for us, the cost, as he made the point, is hitting countries where it hurt. And we know this: food insecurity, supply chains have been disrupted and will continue to be. The Panama Canal is a clear case in point, but not the only one, because our changing rainfall precipitation patterns are creating major problems for the canal, as other parts of the world. And then, of course, we have, which we're going to be talking more about today, uninsurable homes and businesses and so on. So climate resilient development is key. And from concept to delivery, which is really saying that we need to integrate what we're doing, environmental practices, climate risk assessments, and so that we can reduce vulnerability to the impact of climate hazards. That's our focus for today, and we want to look at how, as our deacon, we thank you for referring to our awesome creation. Indeed it is, because what we have been blessed with is also some of the liability that we have to manage. And so conserving biodiversity, reducing greenhouse gases, these are all things that we must pay attention to. So today we have a housing focus, and it should spark, I guess, our thoughts for the other aspects of how we're managing. But housing, as we know, is essential to human well-being. It's essential to the quality of life. And so we want to say, can we come away from this, as Reynold said, with more enlightened and with a sense of how we can each, in our professional circumstance, play a role to make the kind of difference which we have to do, because our climate crisis is not going away. In fact, it is getting worse, because our 1.5 and all of the targets that we have set are not there. So it is my pleasure now to welcome the Honorable Matthew Samuda, Honorable Senator. He has been really speaking. He has a tremendous portfolio, and he has been speaking and has been engaged with issues environment, because as the vice president, I think it was G2K, that was the first time I heard him, when he was speaking about the issue of plastics. And then as he became more engaged, he introduced the plastics ban. So Senator, the Honorable Matthew Samuda, has oversight for water, environment, climate change, and the blue and green economies. Quite a spread. He has been serving as a leader in many ways. He was, from his high school days, president of the Campion College Student Council. He was vice president of G2K following that. And now we know that he is leading this tremendous portfolio. He has a wide breadth, and it is interesting. He has worked for Red Stripe and for Ray and Nephew, and both of those companies, interestingly enough, but since his time, because he was there with marketing and so on, are very dedicated to their environmental performance and engaged with tremendous sustainable activities. So let us welcome Honorable Minister, Honorable Senator Matthew Samuda to address us. Senator Samuda.
Thank you so much, Eleanor. I appreciate the introduction, and I certainly appreciate the opportunity to address the JDA on the important subject that you're taking on this morning. Climate change is an all-encompassing topic. In many ways, because of the breadth of the subject area, it can get murky for persons in the space in terms of what angle and what position do we really take our analysis from, and exactly how do we contemplate how in our commercial lives and in our private lives we make the best decisions, both to reduce our impact as well as to ensure that our world, which is, so we have to understand that we are already 1.2 degrees Celsius hotter than we were in pre-industrial times. Now, oftentimes when you go to the climate conferences or you take in your evening news on a CNN or MSNBC, you will see any climate conference being covered with the 1.5 to stay alive slogan being bandied about. But we are already at 1.2 degrees temperature rise. And I think it needs to be understood that a 1.5 degree temperature rise in many ways is an equal sharing of misery. It's not an ideal. It was established and discussed in the context of being a threshold by which we did not want to surpass, because we knew that adaptation and adjustment and societal stability would be a challenge beyond 1.5. Now, that's the global context. The reality is, anybody who follows the news would see that there have been dozens of catastrophic events over the last decade that have been attributed to climate change. Now, some rightly so, some not so rightly so. And there is a growing scientific focus on climate attribution to determine which ones were really your average one in a century event versus which ones were because of the warming environment and all the issues associated with climate change. But we have to contemplate it in the Jamaican context. And I think this is where it's a very good discussion for the Jamaica Developers Association. And I'm glad that you have turned your lens in this way. Jamaica is, though a unitary state, is an archipelagic state, but majority of us live on the mainland by far. And the majority of us that live on the mainland live within 5 kilometers of the sea, usually in low-lying areas and not in the hilly interior of the island, even though we are a bit of a scattered people in how we've chosen to live throughout the length and breadth of the country. But that makes our risk extreme. 5 kilometers from the sea, with all sorts of projections of what sea level rise will be as it relates to temperature rises above 1.5, should tell you the reason why this is worth the conversation. Now, the impact of climate change is often positioned in the media as a Category 5 hurricane, something catastrophic, an extreme drought, or a once lush land becoming a desert. That's the imagery that we use, but we often don't discuss what we call the slow onset events, which is the gradual rising of the sea. It is the saltwater intrusion in our wells. It is the deteriorating soil quality, the reducing pollination rates. It is the gradual warming of the environment. So the challenge that an industry such as yours has is to determine how you're going to deal with the day-to-day, likely slow onset events, as opposed to the major catastrophes that may have been one in a century before, but now could be one a decade or one every 5 years in that sort of space. And the problem is that the answer to each question may not lead you to one singular answer. Now, the first thing to understand is that the government's response takes in, I would say, 3 major actions and has 2 major pillars. The major pillar that has the first 3 action is Generally, climate action means that the government has, through all of its international agreements, has put forward a mitigation plan through by way of its nationally determined contributions, which is that we want to make sure we're not contributing to the problem, even though we don't use a lot of energy, and we're not a particularly high emitter, certainly in absolute terms. And we have an adaptation plan, and then we have an international engagement plan where we expect to attract the sort of finance that finances the first two pillars, as well as through the loss and damage fund, to ensure that we're able to call on the funds that we deserve based on the impact that climate change has already had. So that's pillar one. Pillar two is our international activity, where we try to ensure that the international agreements that we operate under reflect the unique circumstances that Jamaica faces, certainly that the Caribbean faces, and small island developing states in general. But let's look at the three pillars in action one first, and see how they tie in with the JDA. On the issue of mitigation, mitigation refers to reduction of your emissions, meaning we're trying to cut the emissions of carbon gas, dioxide, methane, and other pollutants into the atmosphere that contribute to the climate crisis that we face. Developers do have a role to play in that, because developers have a choice to determine the designs, the land use, the materials that they put into buildings. So here is where I think the opportunity lies. Ultimately, it is calculable, the impact of green space. Yes, there may be a density allowance, but it is calculable, the green space and its impact on cooling the environment. And I think that is something we're going to have to do a better job on with the Developers Association, and even with the bankers who support your projects, to explain why some square footage genuinely has to be left for green space, not just for aesthetics, but certainly to ensure that the ecological function of green space is maintained, and it reduces some of the need for cooling in your developments, whether commercial or residential. The other critical element at a macro scale now, which is something the JDA should be aware of, not something you can quite take on yet, but certainly should put pressure on the industry to look at, is the carbon emissions related to cement. Cement production and use of cement in construction is one of the larger emitters globally. So there has to be a constant push for innovation, both with how cement is produced to reduce the emissions associated with that, as well as constant push for innovation for not just new construction materials, but new construction methods that ensure you have the lowest emissions possible during your development phase. I think those are the ways in which the JDA can participate in Jamaica, in achieving Jamaica's mitigation targets. The other element is really the buildings that you design. Using optimum building standards, modern 21st century building standards, buildings that take into consideration airflow, that take into consideration lighting possibilities, that are designed in such a way that they will consume less energy to remain cool, and to store water and to manage its wastewater, etc., do have a significantly strong role to play in Jamaica achieving its mitigation targets. So it's not just building a resilient building, which we'll come to in a second, but it's ensuring that your designs and your land use practices match the Jamaican ambition for its climate change. The second point of note is under the adaptation category. The government, no government, quite frankly, can face the wrath of nature in its totality. That would be incredibly arrogant of us to believe that we can. But there are building standards that allow you to ensure that your buildings are at the specifications to manage between Category 3 and Category 5 hurricanes. And in withstanding these hurricanes, that you're able to then get back to operation, both for business continuity and that household regular living standards aren't disrupted in perpetuity. Now, that's where real opportunities lie. One thing that the that you guys need to contemplate is storage. Energy storage or energy resilience by way of either generators or battery power for renewable. And in the other space, water storage. Now, Jamaica does not have enough water storage. That's not our critical issue. And Jamaica is correcting many of the water issues. And I'll come to those in a second as a part of the National Adaptation Plan. But it is imperative, and yes, the parish councils are insisting on water storage, that all buildings have adequate water storage to ensure that there is both business continuity and reduced disruption to the standard way we live in the 21st century with water. And I think that has to be something that the JDA pushes even beyond the national standards under the building code. And I think that's important. But water, because I have responsibility, I'll just share two important pieces of information with you. Yes, we are behind our storage requirements, no doubt about that. But our biggest issue is not the storage, it's the distribution network. You have parishes in Jamaica with a non-revenue water score that goes above 70%, meaning more than 70% of the water is leaked or stolen. There's no business that can function like that, and that itself speaks to the critical issue. Before we started our NRW push in Kingston and St. Andrew, Kingston and St. Andrew used to use 55 million gallons of water a day. That was in 2015. In 2024, Kingston and St. Andrew requires 38 million gallons a day to satisfy its demand, because we have cut our leaks in half. So despite all of the developments and all of the work that has happened and all of the economic growth that you've experienced in Kingston and St. Andrew, by dealing with our distribution, it has reduced daily demand significantly. Now that NRW is now currently at 37%, just want to assure you that we expect to be in the range of about 20 over the next 2 to 3 years. So by 2026, which will further reduce wastage and cut demand. Now there are boroughs in New York that are around 20%. So it's not a bad international standard. We would obviously want to push further, and we will look to pushing further beyond that. The other point to note is that in the worst of our drought of last year, February, which was the worst drought in the history of the country, Kingston and St. Andrew was short by 15 million gallons daily. So the worst drought, chronic shortage of water, we were short by 15 million gallons daily. Sorry, 12 million gallons daily. The contract that we've signed and the ground that we've broken for the development of a new water treatment plant in Content St. Catherine to extract water from the Rio Pobre will supply some 15.5 million gallons of water daily. So with the NRW work that you're doing and with the development of new water treatment capacity, you will catch up to a state of water resilience for your current demand. To build in the resilience for future demand and for continued economic growth, that is where the significant increases in storage are going to have to come, which is why we've spent, I believe, are spending some 150 million Jamaican dollars on the engineering for what will be the new Hermitage that's being spent this year. Well, that construction will start this year. The project development phase will probably take a further 18 months. But that expects to increase the capacity of the Hermitage Dam by some 300%. We are looking at the old Public Works Department designs associated with Mahogany Vale and its integration with the Mona Reservoir and Hope systems. And we are working through those. Those are the systems that will build the sort of water resilience you need for the changing climate in southeastern Jamaica for decades to come. But we are working through those issues. But Kingston and St. Andrew is not in a bad place, and we expect to be significantly advanced in 2026 in Kingston and St. Andrew. Now, you'd have heard recent announcements for Western Jamaica. Varying parts of the country are in varying stages of development. So for instance, we've just gotten our water license to add some 2.5 million gallons daily through the Jordan wells in St. Mary, for instance. Now that will reduce the demand shortfall by 80% in the parish of St. Mary. We're doing the Western Water Pipeline that should reduce water shortage and building the resilience you need for Western Jamaica almost in totality from Martha Brae to Negril. The Prime Minister has announced the Pedro Plains water project where they're completing the cadastral mapping and the titling and the land acquisition for these canals in St. Elizabeth. That's a $200 million US project. That one was originally announced by Prime Minister Manley in 1973. So it's taken us 51 years to get here. But I'm comfortable that over the next 7 years, our adaptation plans meet the need. The question for us as a society will be how we use our bureaucratic structures and our limited finances to close the gaps which will affect us most. And that is where the country is focused on building its national adaptation plan and expects to complete that later this year. The loss and damage concept, not just the loss and damage fund, I think is an important one for us to deal with. The government, your government, has a catastrophe bond. So we are able to recover financially, certainly, from major catastrophes. But we are mindful and concerned about the constant increases in the cost of property insurance. It is something we are aware of, not that there is a quick fix, because it is based on the loss ratios within the Caribbean. Jamaica isn't looked at as a singular territory for large insurers, but it is something we're monitoring very closely and looking at financial solutions to assist in that regard. Now, I know I've gone over my time, Eleanor. I hope I haven't gone too far. I will pause here.
Thank you very much. I'm sure there are going to be some questions and comments for you. And I am not sure whether we have little time to do that. Maybe to take, do we have anything from anybody with a hand up or anything?
The minister will be on the.
Yeah, there will be minister will be on with a panel following this. So there will be an opportunity for some more exchange in some of these critical issues. Okay, so if we could just thank you again, Minister, and if we could just say a thank you to our sponsors. Akeem, can you just help us to thank our sponsors?
The National Housing Trust is Jamaica's primary housing developer and mortgage financier. We are inviting experienced housing developers to partner with us in the development of over 3,000 acres of land owned by the NHT across Jamaica.
To find out more about how you can be a part of this important nation-building initiative, email or call us and let us build the future of housing together.
Solutions, support, service, security. DG View Security. See what you've been missing.
Smart AI video analytics with active detection for humans and vehicles, line cross detection, license plate recognition, face recognition, and specialized cameras. Full service providers in surveillance systems, access control, solar lighting, alarm, and smart home systems. Visit dgviewsecurity.com or call 876-906-6528 for more information.
When selling your home, you could take all the photos yourself. But if you have a RE/MAX agent,
guys, how are you?
They know a team of experts who will get the job done right.
For over 40 years, the Gian Group of companies have been developing plans, laying foundations, building hundreds of homes of distinction, creating exclusive and secure communities in which we live, play, and raise families. The Gian Group of companies, creating homes that people enjoy.
We're back with you, and it is now my honor and pleasure to introduce the IDB Invest team. We have two presenters with us this morning, Mr. Rodrigo Navas, who is going to lead us off, and Mr. Christian Parra. Mr. Navaz has been the director of the manufacturing team at IDB Invest since 2016, responsible for strategy development, business plans, client management, and transaction structuring for the manufacturing sector in Latin America and the Caribbean. He has had a professional career in international finance for several years with multilateral institutions as well as local and regional institutions, different economic sectors. So he brings to us a tremendous experience in the lending, development of lending and capital markets operations, and he holds a bachelor's degree and master's both in business administration with an emphasis in finance and banking. And then we have Mr. Parra, who is a senior climate change investment officer with IDB Invest, part of the climate change team of advisory services at IDB. He joined in 2017 and is responsible for coordinating advisory projects in the energy sector. Very strong energy focus for Mr. Parra. With a diverse background. He has held several positions in Ecuador, National Director of Climate Change Mitigation, Sustainable Energy and Climate Change. He was coordinator at OLADE, the Latin America Energy Organization. Several years ago, OLADE was involved with looking at some ocean thermal initiatives. And he has also been the coordinator of low emission capacity building at UNDP and a researcher at Ecuador's National Institute of Renewable Energy. So we welcome both Mr. Parra, who, interesting, as I said, diverse background, University of Ecuador, University of Calgary in Canada, and a PhD from University in Spain. So gentlemen, welcome. And I know, Mr. Navar, you're going to start off with sharing with us.
Thank you, Ms. Jones, and thank you also, the JDA, for the invitation. I usually, when start speaking about these kind of events, I like to start by saying that climate change is the challenge of our generation. By no shorter means, I would like to echo Ms. Jones and the Senator words, where they were saying something very similar to this, even with some stronger words to it. So I have taken notes of their comments. I'm going to probably be adjusting some of my remarks. I'm originally from Costa Rica, and there's a saying in my country that says, let's start from the beginning. So I will make, before we get into the more interesting themes that my colleague Christian will be elaborating, I would like to present who we are at IDB Invest and what are the different options that we were able to support this very important topic and economic sector in order to battle and put our collaboration into fighting climate change. First of all, many of you are probably aware who the IDB is, and we at IDB Invest are the private sector arm, one of the private sector arms of the IDB group, where we basically provide the mandate that was given to us by our shareholders, including, of course, the government of Jamaica, is to promote the development of our regional member countries. And what is development? I probably take a survey today and ask, last time I checked, it was over 100 participants. Each one of you to give me what is economic development probably will get 100 different answers and probably 100 different correct answers. So basically, we see it in different aspects on it, and basically looking at three different topics in particular. The first one, of course, is climate change, the one that have us here. The second one will be the gender and inequality fight and challenges. And the last one will be the SMEs. And I have been doing housing operations in Latin America and the Caribbean for the last 10 years at the IDB Group. And this sector brings a lot of opportunities. Why? because now with all the technologies and the options that my colleague Christian will be talking about, the housing sector is one of those sectors that can help us align and create development in using all those three thematic things that I just mentioned. Next one, please. We are bankers, and what do bankers do? Still, we love some numbers. So here are some of the numbers of us. Basically, we have 48 shareholders, like I was mentioning, including the government of Jamaica. Most of our shareholding is owned by the governments in the region. We have, together with the IDB group, over 60 years of experience of creating development, and we also have offices throughout the region. Actually, the one we have in Kingston, I will say, is one of the most beautiful ones we have. And that would be my only, I'm not going to say concern, but comment to this seminar is I'd rather have been doing this in person in Jamaica instead of here in my office in Washington, D.C. But well, I think there will be more opportunities to have a dialogue in the near future. Next one. What is the value added we have? Of course, we have a lot of sector expertise, and we have been doing tailor-made solutions for all companies in the region, especially for housing. I will say that in the last probably 7 to 8 years since I took the helm of the manufacturing unit, where we are looking at the housing opportunities, we have been doing businesses in a lot of the countries. Probably our portfolio now in housing and the total operations are north of $500 million. So it's a sector that is a clear priority for us. And how we do it? Well, customizing financial solutions, diversifying the sources of funding, and most especially and related to what Christian will be talking about, these are advisory capabilities to help our clients build more sustainable projects. As all of you know, sustainability is not just the right thing to do, but there are several studies and actions that sustainability is the profitable way to do it. So building greenhouses, building sustainable houses is not just good for the environment, it's good business for each of the developers. Next one. Here are our priority sectors. We, at the IDB Invest, we have 3 different clients divisions. The first one, the infrastructure, where we look at those sectors. From the corporate side, we look at the agribusiness, manufacturing, and tourism. And finally, financial intermediaries, where we support banks and some other institutions in order and related to housing to promote financing solutions for the clients in order to acquire the homes. In terms of our offering, we offer financial products, loans, guarantees, and to some lesser extent, equity and mezzanine investments. Also, trade and supply chain solutions, as well as capital markets and structured finance. This is particularly relevant because we have been very active in the housing markets throughout the region, supporting thematic and green bonds. Housing has a big opportunity to promote these thematic bonds. Once those we start from a little granular and start certifying that homes either by EDGE, LEED, or some of the other certifications that are available. And regarding advisory, of course, the climate change is one of the most important things that Christian will be discussing. And this is where we believe we can provide that by having this merger of a financial solution with knowledge as well as capacity building is the way we see we can create value and provide us an integral solutions that we know that local institutions don't have a capability to provide and our clients and the developments with such an integral one. With better projects come better markets, and we will be sharing the burden and sharing the solutions in order to fight climate change. We have been receiving a lot of awards because of our participation. So here are some of them, including being the Multilateral Development Bank of the Year several years in a row. So you will be partnering with us and therefore with a very experienced institution in the region. And that will be from my side what I would like to say before moving to the expert Christian. I will put in the chat some of my contact information if some of you would like to reach out and have a deeper conversation and analyze the different opportunities. I was looking at the sponsorship announcement, and there are several opportunities based on what the authorities are going to be developing. So looking forward to having these conversations. And now, Christian, thank you very much for your time and leave you with the expert.
Thank you, Rodrigo. Eleanor, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay.
We can hear you. Go ahead.
Great. Thank you so much. It's a
Welcome.
pleasure. It's a pleasure for me to be here with you this morning. I want to go deep into a study that we developed the last year. I left the link in the chat, so the participants who desire can download this document. Is a study that we developed for interventions to increase the climate resilient investments in different countries of the Caribbean. It was focused in Barbados, in Jamaica, and Trinidad and Tobago. So as my colleague Rodrigo says, we are always looking to create the business case. How can we create a sustainable environment where we can be tackling climate change from the mitigation and the adaptation side, but we can also be creating business. That's the idea of this work. So I will encourage you to download it, and I mean you can follow the conversation. And if you have some questions, I will do my best to answer by the end of it. So first, I wanted to go through some numbers because it is important to know where do we are right now, and what are the challenges that we have for the future in terms of climate change. That's my pointer. So we are here. We are in this threshold of 1.2 warming in 2021. This information is given by the Climate Action Tracker. So these guys, what they do is to put together all the pledges that we have in terms of climate change. The first one is policies and actions. What will happen if just we go, let's say, in the business as usual? We just follow the policies and actions that we have in place. This will be the scenario. In the worst case scenario for this would be 3.6 Celsius degrees. And in the best scenario for these policies and action will be +2 degrees. You have the other scenario that is if we get the 2030 targets only for the NDCs, it will require the full implementation of the NDCs. And the optimistic scenario for this will be a +1.9 degrees, and the worst scenario would be 3 degrees. Yes, if we implement all the NDCs. The other scenario is what happens if we implement the pledges and targets that go beyond the NDCs. That would be the best scenario for the NDCs policies, and we will have warming of, in the best case scenario, 1.7 degrees Celsius. And the best scenario, the optimistic scenario, will be just 1.5 scenario. So let's say we are fighting for this scenario. You know, we're doing our best for this to happen. Nevertheless, it will imply an increase of the temperature of +1.5 degrees Celsius. And now we can, with this slide, I wanted to show you how does it look like. Okay, what is the difference between the two scenarios in numbers? So the Intergovernmental Panel of Climate Change has set some numbers in order for us to understand what are the implications of these two scenarios. And I will give just a couple examples. So what does it mean in 1.5 degree scenario in terms of ice in the Arctic? So we will have ice-free summers in the Arctic every 100 years. And comparing with the 2 degree scenario, the ice-free summers in the Arctic Ocean will be every 10 years. So you can see the impact. Now, in just 0.5 degrees of difference, you can see the heavy impact that it represents for the ecosystem and also for the communities. So you have this. You have, for example, in terms of householders, 1 billion people exposed to severe heat waves every 5 years. And in the other scenario, we have 2.7 billion people, more than the double exposed to heat waves. In terms of flood risk, for example, 100% increase in flood risk in the 1.5 scenario, and 2 degrees in the, and in the 2 degree scenario, 170% increase in flows. So you can see the huge difference between the two scenarios. As I mentioned, we developed this study focusing the countries of the Caribbean to understand the business case. What is the business case for climate change adaptation, and how can we work with the several stakeholders? You are one of the key stakeholders that we have identified, so we can be part of the solution. As I mentioned, the Caribbean islands face climate risks due to their size and location. Droughts, hurricanes, floods, warming temperatures, and sea levels rise threaten the environment and the economic sectors of the region. This is the why. This is the big question: why the Caribbean is so vulnerable to climate change, and why it is important that we take action. So here are some data from the study. 5%. It is projected 5% increase in the peak of hurricane wind speeds. The increased trends in 1 day and 5 day extreme rainfall likely to lead to more severe floods. 7% of reduction in precipitation, resulting in at least one severe drought per decade. Regional sea level rise. It is estimated from 2006 to 15. It was 2.5 millimeters per year. That was increased, but it is supposed to be higher than that. The temperature have already been raised by 1 degree Celsius, and the projections from another 0.8 degrees. It is projected, no? So if we analyze the wind, the hurricane, the losses due to the hurricanes in the region, we will have if we put a number on that, it will be 215 million losses, while the annualized losses from flooding are 20 million just in Jamaica. These numbers are just for Jamaica. And the energy consumption from the increase of cooling costs because of the projected warming is 8.5 million per year just for Jamaica. You can see these numbers, and you can see the methodology used in the study that I mentioned that is in the link. In terms of sustainability certifications in buildings, we see now that most of them, or let's say the most demanded, are more focused in the mitigation part. So the lead certification, the ED certification, that we also use it as a multilateral development bank. We have the compromise to align all investments to the climate, to the Paris Accord. And it implies that all investments needs to be certified with sustainable certifications, focusing climate change mitigation, but nowadays we are also exploring certifications that incorporate the component of climate change adaptation. The recent one that we are exploring is the certification Fast Infra. You can also look for it in the web, and you will find that it's one of the best certifications nowadays that is including the climate change adaptation part. As I mentioned, the two approaches that we have: mitigation. As I mentioned, mitigation can be tackled easily with the certifications that are already in the market, but we need to focus more for the Caribbean in adaptation. So what does it mean, resilience in the building sector? Actions that manage to reduce the negative impacts to climate change, of course. What is it should be location and context specific. It's not the same talking about climate change adaptation measure in the Caribbean that comparing with other regions. The scenario is totally different. So some examples of it include infrastructure upgrades as flood protection and business continuing planning. So you will see in the study, so what we did is to try to identify what are the measurements, and we always focus to have interventions that will be economically and technically feasible. That's something that we do in all our studies, in all our projects, because we in the future, we can be financing those interventions, so that's why we are always looking for the business case. Where is the business case? So you can see here, I don't want to go deep in each of those, but you can see that we have tailored solutions for each of the possible threats. Now, for wind mitigation measures, for example, we have roof anchors to wall, impact resistant doors and windows, heat mitigation, climate system control. So we did, as I mentioned, the business case. We put some numbers in the interventions. What is the cost and what will be the return of the investment? So you can see this in the document that I mentioned. These are some of the most common ones: rainwater harvesting, hurricane shutters, green roofs, hurricane wind roof anchoring, reducing heat gain on building envelopes. And the interesting thing that for Jamaica, for example, and for Barbados, we identified that these measurements are already in the building codes. So that was very interesting to understand that the policy is also crossing, for small and medium enterprises, we understand that it's also an opportunity in this. So how can we help these small and medium enterprises to provide the solutions that we are looking for? The market sizing of Jamaica is 711K units. And the demand we can see is 15 units per year. So we can see that the projection is to increase the building. So we developed some archetypes of construction, one small house of 70 square meters, and housing solutions also for small and medium enterprises with areas around 500 square meters. You can also see that in the study. These are some of the results. Obviously, I'm not going to go deep in each of the interventions, but you can see what we did is an study, an economic study of what is the cost of the different interventions of the several interventions that we studied. What is the upfront cost of it? On what is the derived benefit over 5 years? So you can see here, all of them positive. And what is the return of the investment in 5 years? So you can see in the best cases we have 233x. This is the business case. This is the type of things that we need to see in this in a proactive approach. Looking this like an investment opportunity where the housing market can be benefited. As I mentioned, the business case, we see the small and medium companies have the potential to provide all their services, all the financing and the product sales, obviously also the services, the operation, the maintenance and the renovation. This is an opportunity for this type of companies to provide. What we see as next steps for the market to educate consumers on the importance of climate resilient infrastructure is obviously to reduce the risk and the potential losses. We have seen a lot about the willingness to include resilience add-ons in the product, for the mortgage financing, no, for new buildings or retrofitting for existing infrastructure. That is something that we are working with our financial institution clients. How can we include this type of financial products in the markets, so obviously the future market will have this inclusion of climate resiliency. Other point that we see important to understand is the need of capacity building, to allow the construction industry to experiment with prototypes that meet the purchasers' safety needs. So I think that these are the most important things that we are looking forward to help also our clients or stakeholders in the Caribbean region. As I mentioned, it will be great if you can take a look on the numbers that we develop in that study. It's a very, very important study in order to build the business case of climate change adaptation in the Caribbean. That's what I have to mention in this morning. So please let me know if you have some questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Christian. That was very enlightening, and certainly the business case is one that we have to push, because if we have always said that the bottom line is important, and if we want to effect change, we have to determine how the bottom line figures in it. So thank you very much. Thank you very much, IDB Invest, Rodrigo, and bringing clear to us that the housing sector is such an important part of your portfolio. Very, very enlightening, and we look forward to the questions and comments coming, and particularly as we enter into the panel discussion. But before that, we want to again just thank you, and to thank our sponsors. If we can just have another show of appreciation, shall we say.
For over 40 years, the Gian Group of companies have been developing plans, laying foundations, building hundreds of homes of distinction, creating exclusive and secure communities in which we live, play, and raise families. The Gian Group of companies, creating homes that people enjoy.
When selling your home, you could take all the photos yourself. But if you have a RE/MAX agent,
guys, how are you?
They know a team of experts who will get the job done right.
Solutions, support, service, security. DG View Security. See what you've been missing.
Smart AI video analytics with active detection for humans and vehicles, line cross detection, license plate recognition, face recognition, and specialized cameras. Full service providers in surveillance systems, access control, solar lighting, alarm, and smart home systems. Visit dgviewsecurity.com or call 876-906-6528 for more information.
The National Housing Trust is Jamaica's primary housing developer and mortgage financier. We are inviting experienced housing developers to partner with us in the development of over 3,000 acres of land owned by the NHT across Jamaica.
To find out more about how you can be a part of this important nation-building initiative, email or call us and let us build the future of housing together.
It is my pleasure to introduce Mr. Jerry Johnson, who has been part of the Caribbean region for quite some time, and coming very appropriately after our IDB Invest team, where they spoke about small and medium enterprise engagement. Mr. Johnson is a senior advisor for small enterprise assistance funds, specifically focusing on CEIF's Caribbean SME Growth Fund. He has extensive experience in economic development in emerging markets and has played a significant role in investments and providing strategic support to SMEs in the Caribbean. SMEs are very important. The majority, well over 70% of business operations in the Caribbean. So this is very important. He has served as a senior policy advisor to the Government of Jamaica Ministry of Finance and Public Service, and his efforts have been directed towards improving regional trade, increasing exports, enhancing the availability of risk capital for SMEs, and looking really to foster economic growth and social impact. So let us welcome Mr. Gerard Johnson to share with us now what we ought to be thinking about as he follows on and joins the IDB Invest team. Jerry?
Thank you very much, Eleanor. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, good morning, everybody, and thank you for involving me in this important event. This initiative that's been going on over the years. Very grateful to be here. Also, always a pleasure to share the virtual podium with the IDB. I always have a soft spot in my heart for that institution where I spent a lot of time and I learned a lot, and hopefully did some good, made a lot of mistakes. Very quickly, I will shorten what I was going to present because I've got to head to the airport with my wife. She had an accident that broke her foot, and we are heading to the airport. So in 1 hour. What I would like to say is to pick up on what the minister, a theme that the minister pointed to, and that the IDB Invest team pointed to, and that is the balance between adaptation and resilience. In other words, Jamaica's contribution to the world's effort to limit temperature rise is very important. But I think it's also important to look at what's been happening in the region recently. The loudest voice, the loudest champion and most powerful champion, I would say, on the international stage right now is Prime Minister Mia Mottley. And talking about the loss and damage, talking about the consequences for places like Jamaica, like Barbados, of the development model used by the developed countries, which produced the carbon that we're suffering from today and will continue to suffer from. The issue, though, is what does a country like Barbados, like Jamaica, actually contribute to climate change? If Jamaica were to be 100% green, zero emissions, it would not have a measurable impact on the climate warming process, but it's a matter of global responsibility, being part of that community, that is important to remember those commitments. However, adaptation, which is doing something yourself to protect yourself against the negative impacts of climate change, in other words, extreme weather events, that in terms of if you have $1 and you have to choose where you're going to put it, and if one could be less emissions and the other one would be a stronger roof, I think there's a strong argument for the latter. Barbados even, they have the possibility of developing oil and gas reserves. And so that vociferous champion for climate responsibility, Barbados pragmatically has said we will exploit oil and gas as a way to pay for our adaptation. Guyana is exploiting its oil and gas, but its development plan is a green plan, is preserving forests. So at the end of the day, adaptation I think in a country that's a developing country exposed to extreme weather risks, has at least as much priority as meeting climate commitments, or perhaps even a higher responsibility to promote adaptation if we're talking about low-income housing. The private equity firm that I work with, we've acquired a company that construction company that focuses on climate resilience. At the same time, we have acquired a solar leasing company that is working on the transition to clean energy. So it's not as if we are only on the side of adaptation, we're also on the side of resilience. There's one little facet of all this that I would like to talk about quickly is insurance. Everybody knows that if you go to the bank for a mortgage, if the asset is not insured, you can't get it. That's true for households, it's true for businesses, it's true for real estate developers, it's true for governments sometimes. So insurance, without insurance, it's very difficult for the housing industry or the construction industry in general to grow and to be successful. So it is very important. It was alluded to by the minister. We know that the cost of insurance has been skyrocketing much faster than the rate of inflation. Last year alone in the region, it was a 17% increase. Although the average inflation rate in the region was below, was in single digits. And that's difficult for Jamaica because although Jamaica has been lucky in recent years in terms of being hit by extreme weather events, I mean, there's been flooding, there's been heavy rain, but largely catastrophic events have been avoided. But nevertheless, the rates went up because, as you know, insurance companies look at the Caribbean as a region, not necessarily country by country. So that is something. So we do have to look at what's happening in the region because it ends up on our bill and it ends up changing the premium that we have to pay. We've been working, the IDB study that you just heard presented there, we were lucky enough at the place where I work to be involved in that study, and we're very grateful for that. That study was very important in showing that individual investments to strengthen roofs, ensure drainage works, etc., pays for itself. The unfortunate thing is the insurance companies don't care. If you have the most a roof that can resist a Cat 10, you still pay the same premium as if you have a zinc roof. It's the country risk, it's a regional risk. They just do not have the resources to go structure by structure determining actual risk. So there are initiatives to try to get insurance companies to do that, to look at country risk versus regional risk, to look at individual structure risk versus a global estimation of risk. If that can be achieved, that will increase the incentive highlighted by the IDB study to invest in harder structures and more resilient structures to adapt to climate change. Insurance companies, as you know, have been failing in Florida. Remember Dial? Dial collapsed because of not having sufficient coverage for a catastrophic event in Cayman Islands. So climate change means that historical data for estimating risk isn't reliable anymore because risks are changing. So if you don't have time series to assess risk, then you just add on a fudge factor. So that's more, once again, just slapping on more cost for us. And in some cases, there's one company, a Swiss company, which I won't name, that just decided to not cover the Caribbean anymore. The risk is just not worth the return. And the sense of what they would have to charge, they wouldn't be able to sell any insurance. So there's a crisis coming here. This is the end of my comments. I'm fast forward to the lessons from Florida. And Florida they've had a spate of insurance failures. They created this citizens insurance company, which is basically the government creating an insurance company for people who can't get insurance. So here, especially affordable housing, you need insurance to get a mortgage. You can't get one. So the government decided to create its own insurance company. The government also, to keep the insurance companies from going under, created its own reinsurance facility. So if you're an insurance company and the risk is too much for you, so you're not going to offer coverage, the government says, wait, let me back you up, and so you will still offer coverage. But those kinds of solutions, places like Jamaica, I mean, for the government to backstop the insurance industry is not a feasible option. For the government to create its own insurance company for affordable housing is also not, I don't think, in a wise strategy. I think that we have to find ways to keep insurance companies providing insurance. We have to keep insurance companies willing to cover the Caribbean, to cover Jamaica. And I think the key is what is being presented here, adaptation, the focus on bespoke, custom designed solutions that allow individual houses, individual companies to weather the storm. And so I'll close there. I don't know if there are any comments or questions, but hopefully that was clear.
Thank you very much, Jerry. You raised some key points there, particularly in terms of the insurance crisis. Now, we have a few questions that have come from the audience, but we're going to move into the panel discussion and then see how we can have a sharing. So hopefully you can maybe stay with us just a little while longer, and we're sorry about your personal circumstance and pray that your wife will get the right treatment so that we can resolve that. But thank you for being with us, and God go with you as you travel. All right, so we're going to invite the panel now to join us, and we're talking with Minister Samuda, whom we have met and had much to say, and we have a couple questions from the audience for him. And then we'd like to invite, very appropriately, Mr. Thomas Smith, since we're talking insurance, who is the Managing Director of JN General Insurance, and Ms. Heather Pinnock, who is Managing Director of Lucy Caribbean, and is described as a placemaker. We want to hear more about that sustainable tropical living, as we're going to have to, sorry. And then we have Leonard Francis, who is CEO of NEPA, and has a lot of experience, but has just been appointed CEO and government town planner. So we're inviting Mr. Smith, Ms. Pinnock, and Mr. Leonard Francis to join us on this panel. So if you can open your mics and open your cameras, we would appreciate that. Now, let's see how we begin. Welcome to you all. Welcome, Leonard. Welcome, Heather. And maybe we could just start by just a few questions for the minister, that and addressing what we're seeing in the Q&A. And we just want to remind our participants that if you have questions or comments, please put them in the Q&A so that we can pick them up and deal with them. So let's start with Minister Samuda first. I'm not seeing you on the camera though, if you're there. Are you still with us, Senator Samuda? Not seeing him. Are you there? Yeah, okay. All right. Well, those questions, and maybe one of them we can address to Mr. Francis, but let me just tell you a little bit about, since I said Mr. Francis, and I'm going to address a question to him first. Leonard is, as we said, the CEO, Government Town Planner at NEPA, has had several years of experience with aspects of the built environment, supervising research and dealing with permitting and so on. He's an adjunct lecturer at the University of Technology and has chaired the Urban and Regional Planning Advisory Committee. He has a master's degree in planning and business from Ryerson and UWI, along with other degrees in environmental planning, economics, and in management, and in law. And so we're happy to have you, Leonard, and happy to have you join the Jamaica Developers Association, because, of course, as head of NEPA and government town planner, you play a critical role in the regulatory environment. It's a joy to have also Mr. Smith, JN General Insurance. He has had significant years of experience in management and in general insurance, managing director of JN Insurance, and is himself well-versed in global insurance standards and the IT service delivery. And so, Mr. Smith, maybe you will help us pick up on the issue of insurance. I know several years ago with the disaster risk management community, there was a push to try to get the insurance company to come along especially after Ivan, I think, or maybe even before that, to see how you could assist in getting persons to put in place disaster risk management measures, mitigation measures, to gain insurance credit. Now we're hearing that is, and because we know what has been happening, that is even more difficult. So perhaps you can help us. You can help us there. And then Miss Heather Pinnock, who has had again 25 years of experience. We're trotting out these years. We had agreed that we weren't going to talk too much about the years, but there we are. And she has her training degrees in architecture, urban design, and project management, and has worked on various projects across the Caribbean, specializing in master planning, energy efficient and net zero buildings, sustainable housing. And many of you will probably know, she was leading the Urban Development Corporation for a while. And in 2021, she led the Enhancing Sustainability Standards. She's very involved with UN Women in Caribbean and so on. So here we have a distinguished panel. And perhaps just the questions, maybe let's start with insurance. And then what we have some specific, and we want to ask the panelists to just dive in and share your perspectives on this. One of the things, again, that we have always talked about as we talk about crisis and exposure and mitigation and adaptation, and a phrase that I personally like to use a lot is that we need to take charge of our vulnerability. So we know insurance is a problem. We're vulnerable. We are exposed to hazards. We can't do anything about the hazards, but we can do something about how we deal with them. So let's start with insurance, since that's where we ended with Mr. Jerry Johnson, and of course the business case. The minister made the point. So to put you on the spot, Mr. Thomas, Mr. Thomas Smith, let's just get your perspective on it, however you wish to handle it.
Thank you very much, Eleanor. Are you hearing me clearly?
Very clearly. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. First, let me just say, listening to the presentation so far this morning has left me very hopeful, and clearly we're going to try and leave this place a little better than we found it, which is the best that we can do, and make sure that those following us have somewhere to enjoy to live. And I'm very happy to see all of the initiatives that are in place, certainly from the minister's side, certainly from the CDB side, and etc. Jerry, thank you very much for those comments. Let me just add to and clarify a couple of things based on what you had said. First of all, the regional increase that you spoke about of the pricing for property insurance, you quoted at 17%. Let me just be very clear. For Jamaica last year, the increase was much higher than that average of 17%. The Jamaican market for both homeowners insurance and commercial insurance, the average was much higher. For commercial insurance, it was closer to 50%.
Wow.
And for homeowners insurance, it was 25 to 30%. So our market in particular took a hard blow last year, despite us, as you said, not having any major catastrophes for quite a few years. And that is a direct result of just the international sphere and the loss ratios and the climate change initiatives that are taking place, or the climate change impact that has been hitting the insurance market generally. The statistics are showing that every year, 2022, 2023, there's a substantial increase in catastrophes around the world. And it's not just the actual catastrophes, it's the resultant damage. And so whilst there's an increase in frequency, the actual severity of the losses has been substantially increasing. And so the demand for higher premiums from the various different territories continues. And Jamaica is a double catastrophe exposure territory. And so the demand for pricing, for minimum pricing in our market has been significant. Now, just to add, of the 10 general insurance companies operating in the market, very little of the risk is actually retained here in Jamaica. 90 to 95% of the risk is actually sent to reinsurers. So the pricing is seriously dictated by the international market. We have very little control over the pricing of the product that we sell, which is, as you are consumers all here, the price of your insurance to insure your home. So I just wanted to make that very clear. Jerry also used the phrase that the insurance companies don't care, but the truth is that we do, and that there is a differential in pricing, state categorically, for construction differences. So a concrete roof house does get a better pricing than a zinc roof house. So just from a basic perspective, that is a normal market standard. Now that the pricing has gone up back to levels that we experienced back in 92, 93 as our last real serious hard market, the differential in the pricing for difference in construction is now much more stark, as opposed to when we're in a very soft market cycle and the pricing is at a very low level, then the differential is minimal. But in the current environment, people will still see now a substantial difference in the pricing between a concrete roof house and a zinc roof house. So that's a market norm. Let me just correct that for you. The points in relation to the increasing in substantial damage in the Caribbean is a real issue. Jerry, you started with the Dial situation in Cayman, and that was the start of, well, not just the start, it was indicative of the modeling that the insurance companies use. And these models are international standards, and it's not just the Caribbean insurance companies that use them. These are used all over the world. And these models are catching up. They're supposed to be predictive tools. And the truth is that every year we see some beating of the predictions. Hurricane Dorian sat on Abaco in the Bahamas for 3 days. There's no model that predicted 3 days of a hurricane in one particular territory and destroyed the island. Again, just making the point that the predictive tools that we're using, as Jerry rightly pointed out, they're now adding this fudge factor. I love the use of that terminology, Jerry, to try and mitigate or try and better predict. But it really is a fudge factor, and it's causing for further increasing in pricing, as you rightly say. I have to agree with you there. So I just open with those basic comments, Eleanor, and if there are any questions, etc., happy to answer.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Tom. Can we move over to Heather? I'm going to call on Heather now to make some comments, and then I'm going to come to you, Leonard.
Thank you, Eleanor. Good morning, everyone. I just want to I want to join in by saying I do, as you said in my bio, truly support sustainable housing. Housing has been a big part of my career to date. I started out back in the day just building houses, not giving much thought to the impact of what those houses had on our environment and our community. But over the years, I've began to really understand how much building housing is such a large part of our construction sector. It's such a huge amount of what gets built is housing. So it's really important that we consider housing. I mean, I generally look at the entire built environment and all of things that get built, but housing is such a significant portion. It's also usually the most expensive thing that we own, you know, and so it's the biggest personal investment that people make. And so living in a small island developing state that is highly vulnerable to the impacts of climate change, it becomes extremely important that we consider what can we do to be more resilient. And I just want to touch on the defining that resilience a little more for our conversation, because there is resilience, but then what are the levels of that resilience? And so there is the resilience. There's some studies, and I'm going to use some of the theories that are out there. And they look at 4 key areas of resilience. The first is looking at the threshold, which is preparation, which is designing for what may come. And so that goes into the part about the professionals you use, the kinds of standards you use, looking at global development guidelines and development certifications that confirm the standards. Then there's the ability to cope. There's a coping capacity. What do you do during? How are you able to survive an event? And that event can be a singular hurricane event or a long, more stretched out drought event, for example. And then recovery. When the specific event is over, how quickly can you get back to normal? How quickly can you bounce back? And then the fourth one, which I think is probably the most important in what we're discussing today, is the adaptive capacity. What can we do to change? How do we change in the face of changed, according to Minister, we are beyond changing, you know, we are changed in a changing and changed climate. What can we do to change? And that can be so many things, including some of the interventions in the building as we spoke about, but it can go to the level of maybe pushing some of our towns back from the coast, moving certain developments. They may be very expensive things, but they may be very necessary to consider for our long-term climate planning. And so these are the things I want us to think about, not just in one way, but in all the ways that we need to build resilience to our changing climate, to our changed climate in our housing capacity. And my final point here is I just think it's very important to consider traditional stuff as well. We often think about new high-tech standards and stuff, but we will also see that in many of our traditional houses or simple houses that we see, they address a lot of our climate concerns. They're lifted up off the ground to save them from flooding. They have louvers to moderate natural ventilation. They have fretwork to filter the sunlight. And a lot of the things that we see as kind of old-fashioned, they were very much part of being responsive to the climate. And we should give some thought to including those again. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Heather. Some useful points there that we need to take on board. You raised the question of recovery. Recovery is now gaining a lot of focus in the Caribbean through SEDEMA, which is our Caribbean Disaster Management Agency, because we have found that with all of this catastrophic damage, the Caribbean really we have focused on preparedness, response, and recovery. So adaptation is also an important part of that, risk identification, and so on. Okay, I'm gonna go over now to Leonard for his perspective. You sort of sit in the hot seat in many ways, but one of the things that we want to do, I would like to have us think about, particularly having listened to IDB Invest, having listened to the minister, to Jerry, is that this is not about a permitting process or living with regulations. Regulations are very important. We need to guide, but I would like for us to begin to think about how we can really integrate. And as we develop the business case, we do the screening, and coming back to the point that Heather made and even that Tom has made, because the whole issue of self-insurance is also, people are talking that, and if we're going to self-insure, we have to look at how we put in place some of these adaptive measures, some of these risk reduction measures, so that we minimize loss, minimize damage. So over to you, Leonard, from where you sit, some of your challenges and how you see yourself contributing to this dialogue. Not hearing you, Leonard. Can you unmute, please? Can you unmute?
Sorry.
Yeah, there.
Now?
Fine.
Okay, good. So let me start by pointing out that the National Environment and Planning Agency, we definitely support sustainable, resilient homes and eco-friendly homes. We do that. But in looking on the topic, we actually start to unbundle what actually our insurance premiums, how they were actually done, are put together. And we are seeing from our perspective where it's such as a no or low claims from weather events, replacement costs, type of construction material, square footage of building, proximity to key infrastructure, damage prevention steps, reduce mortgage and renovations, and all of those factors. We actually debundle it, and we actually look on actual homes that we have seen in front of us that are to be sustainable and resilient and eco-friendly. And I don't want to go over back exactly what are eco-friendly homes, but what we are seeing in front of us and what we are encouraging, just to quickly state it, is that the objectives protect residents from climate-related hazards, minimize environmental impacts, promote energy efficiency, and enhance community development. So we don't only look on it from homes, but from a NEPA perspective, we actually look on it from an entire community itself. Now, some of the features of sustainable homes: sustainable materials, energy efficiency, water management, natural vegetation, green landscaping, house designs. And we have seen projects where the designs themselves, actually the shape of the house itself, length for it, the type of concrete roof, or it is designed circular or otherwise, that they are actually, the designs are actually impacted issues such as hurricanes, heating, ventilation, or otherwise. Now, just to link it back now, we believe that if the units are designed in such a way that they are not impacted as much, just as by climate change, flooding, heavy rainstorms, or other factors, you will have low or no claims. As I said before, we are seeing designs like that. So in our opinion, that could be factored in reducing our insurance premiums. As was said by a presenter, someone with a zinc roof versus a concrete roof, the one with the concrete roof would get less. And persons are proposing not concrete roofs for concrete roofs' sake, but they are designed in such a way so that it's not only a matter of storm, but of the other factors as well. We're seeing projects in respect of persons are designed in such a way to actually have low replacement costs, in that the designs as they are actually using recycled material, the type of construction, you are seeing less wear and tear based on the designs, based on the material used, that could affect your replacement costs as well. Of course, the type of construction material, we said that before, and most of the eco-friendly homes we are seeing and are sustainable resilient, they're actually smaller homes within themselves. So that in itself would affect the type of the cost of the insurance itself. The eco-friendly homes and if they are sustainable and resilient, the proximity to infrastructure, we are seeing cases where that is not an issue because the infrastructure itself, how it is designed and how it is done and how the surrounding is, the infrastructure is normally built into the home itself, such as water harvesting. The design itself lends where in terms of fire, the fires that are a major hazard based on the type of material it is done, and other factors as well. Now, our concepts that we're seeing that are proposing and what we are thinking of as well is that there will be less renovations. And we believe, and based on what we are promoting, that the mortgage in itself also plays a factor in insurance. And what we're seeing is that where the homes are designed along these principles or proposed along these principles, implementation might be a different factor. Persons would have more sense of satisfaction. The homes and the communities are more utility function. You have a greater sense of community. Maintenance is less. So more the persons would live there more, remain in these locations, and we believe strongly that that could affect the insurance claims. Just from a NEPA perspective, again, we are supporting homes as they actually meet the various planning standards and environmental standards. We will support them, and we can understand that those that we have seen that have been designed, we believe that they could be looked on for reduced insurance premiums, at least some of them that we have looked on. I don't know if I've answered the questions.
Well, thank you, Mr. Francis. I have one question from our participants. They're asking, and we're going to ask you if you can help us, whether the municipal corporation can require rainwater harvesting for landscaping and indeed gray water recycling. It's a water issue, more efficient use of water. Are the municipal corporations in a position to do that? And then, of course, that is also linked with NEPA and the regulatory environment.
Okay. Yes, what has happened is that in the various development orders and the other policies, that is encouraged. So if you actually look at the various orders, it talks about rainwater harvesting and they talk about reuse of rainwater. As a matter of fact, at NEPA, that is something we are encouraging wholeheartedly. And several developments actually reuse the grey water to actually use in the landscape, or as it's treated properly and for other reasons as well. So if you might go in some large developments, hotels or otherwise, you're gonna see it has a section there where you cannot turn on and it tells you unsafe water, do not drink, and you cannot access it. And it is used in the landscaping. So it's something that is encouraged, and rainwater harvesting is encouraged. What we are planning on doing though is that we have started the process in that we are actually starting a process where developments that meet a minimum requirement, we will actually give you a green development certificate, and we are developer proposes and it meets our minimum standards. You'll be placed on a fast track process, and we are looking at other incentives that we can provide for you if it meets our minimum standards based on the policies, environmental and planning policies. Hope I have answered the question adequately. If not,
all right, Mr. Francis, you have raised some points because we wanted to come back to see how NEPA can lead this process that we're talking about, building of resilience and so on. But let me give you a break, and if our IDB Invest colleagues are there, we have some questions from the participants. One of the questions relates to green roofing, whether we could get some more information on that generally and in a Jamaican context. And also you raised the issue of supporting green bonds. There's a question about that, if you could help us a little, because really we want to also come back to the business of this greening. The minister mentioned green space and the importance of that, and we want to hear some more about that and maybe ask Heather to comment there eventually, but let's go to the IDB first.
Thank you, Lenore.
Christian, yeah.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, with respect to the first question about green roofing, as you may know, this has been an not a technology, but something that has been implemented mostly in Europe. So we can see that let's say the market for green roof, the business case is set in Europe. We are looking for this type of solutions to spread in Latin America and the Caribbean region. Nevertheless, at this point, I cannot assure that it will be a solution that will fit some of the locations in the Caribbean. We have to go deep in the study of this type of solution for the Caribbean. Obviously, other regions that have some specific conditions can be target for this, but at this point, I cannot assure that green roofing can be fully adapted in the Caribbean. I think it's a nice point to go to a tailored study for the region. And in terms of green bonds, yes, this is something that is in my mind right now. If we can create the case study for climate change adaptation linked to a green bond, how can we create a financial product that can be used for the local financial institutions in order to create the value around green bonds? How can we put together all the benefits of a green bond related to climate change adaptation? How can we do this business case? That's why we are working with financial institutions, with our clients, to understand better how can we create this type of financial instruments. What I see clearly is something linked to climate change adaptation, but we need to go at the tailored side level, as our colleague Thomas showed us at the beginning, not the regional context, but the side level. That's something that we need to consider.
Okay, thank you very much. Heather, would you like to come in here, make any further comments? Green space designing for resilience, and then of course there's a whole issue of density, which is a major one, and there's been some discussion elsewhere about our re-examination of how we consider density at the moment, and Mr. Francis can probably come in afterwards, but Heather, this is over to you. Any thoughts there?
Well, as a planner myself, so I will lead up for Leonard. As a planner myself, I often hear that there's no planning. And there is, I think one of the problems is that we don't necessarily all know or understand, or that it's publicized enough. So we do have pretty decent planning standards. There is a new development order for Kingston and St. Andrew, and I don't want to steal Leonard's thunder here, so I'll let him talk about it. But I will say, as a planner, as a real estate professional, as a design professional, and as a real estate professional, I think one of the biggest issues is that a lot of people just don't know. And so maybe more public education is necessary. What the essence of good planning is that you say, this is what's allowed to happen here, and this is what's not allowed to happen. And it also means that this is allowed to happen somewhere else. And I think clarity in that will help us to understand where we're going to see tall buildings going up, what would be the infrastructure requirements for that, how will it be climate resilient, because a lot of people see a tall building and say, oh, this is a problem. What's going to happen with the water and stuff? And a lot of that is actually built into the planning guidelines, built into the building application. But I don't think that everyone knows or understands. So I do feel strongly that what is needed is a lot of public education. And that public education may also provide some useful feedback. But in terms of overall climate resilience, and in fact, you'll notice in my bio, I said sustainable, not just climate resilient, because I, as you know, feel very strongly that it is not only about responding to the climate, but that sustainability is about the 3 Ps: people, planet, and profit, you know? So the climate impact is not only an environmental concern. And I really want to applaud Minister Samuda, because whenever he speaks about this, he always puts it in the context of society and the economy. You know, the economy has to, we need a viable and thriving economy. We need a viable and thriving society, and we need a viable and thriving environment.
Yeah.
So it's really that intersection, that balance, that not too much of anyone in any direction, that we try to find a balance that allows us to develop, allows us to advance, but do so in a very responsible way. And so that really, that's my short additional contribution, is that I think in everything we must try to find balance. We must try to find the best way so that nothing is out of balance, so that there's never too much emphasis on one or the other, and that we really do look heavily at how we can understand in Jamaica, to get to our local context, understand our local context better. And this is me doing a run up to you, Leonard. So you tell us about how, I'll let you tell us about how our development planning standards are improved, Mr. Government Town Planner. I will leave it to you.
Thank you, Heather.
Heather, you could have gone ahead. I don't have an issue with that. You know, we collaborate.
You are the Government Town Planner, sir, and we're glad to have you.
All right. No, I thought it was joint of government. Okay. But the reality is this, and I'll be very brief on it. What we have done is that we have benchmarked against international standards in what we are doing. So the Jamaican standards in respect of planning, it is not as if we have just sat down and have consultation, which we do, but in coming up with them, we have benchmarked as well and look on best practices. That is a definite yes. Now, I just want to touch a point in that years ago, President was saying to me, why are we having so much suburban development and so much sprawl? You guys need to have higher densities and try and get higher densities in the various urban centers. So we did the necessary studies and we started to do that. Now, when persons actually see what it looks like, you know what started to happen? You start to have a lot of outcry. We have been encouraging green buildings. We've been encouraging green roof. We've been encouraging solar panels. We have been encouraging everything that is out there. We have actually had policies to address them. But there's one key thing a lot of persons don't understand. We can write every single policy we want and do everything that we want. But guess what? It is the developers who do the implementation. And the key thing is that, and that is why we have to partner with everyone. We have to partner with everyone. And as my colleague said, it is a balancing act. A country that is poor, call it poor and middle class, right? And is one of the most rapid growing economies. Do you realize that one of the things driving was tourism alone, but it was the construction industry? And so as a country, we're balancing the environment, we're balancing the social needs, we're balancing the economy, we're balancing a lot of negativities, we're balancing a lot of citizens, the uprising of the residents, we're balancing a whole lot of things. And you say, as government plan CEO, it's a fun job, but I don't want to say it's difficult, but you just have to find a way to satisfy everyone. And trust me, I've never met two persons who agree on any planning standard or environmental standard we have in Nepal. Never. We're having a discussions and we say green roofs. Let us encourage green roofs. Some are going to argue that they don't want the green roofs because it's going to break through the seal and it's going to crack their roofs or all sort of things. We're saying to people, let us try and implement what we call rainwater harvesting, and also what we call rain gardens, right? Some people say no, they don't want that. But the reality is, our position is to move forward We'll be encouraging sustainable development, we're encouraging eco-friendly homes, and we'll be encouraging from our perspective as well to try and see as best as we can that whatever developments we're approving are sustainable and are in harmony with the environment as much as possible. I don't know, I took liberty of expanding across what you're asking, but just to let you know that we accept ideas here at the National Environment and Planning Agency. There's a concepts, and we are willing to work with you to find any solution that is necessary. Just to let you know that.
All right, thank you, Mr. Francis. You mentioned about rain gardens. There's one of the questions coming from our audience. How about consideration of the implementation of rain gardens in residential yards to clean stormwater filling the aquifer? Yeah,
we're on that. You know why? And it's part of our proposals along with the National Works Agency, because it's not only about recharging your aquifers. It's not only about slowing down the water going to the road. It is about a whole lot of things. It's about, remember, you know, we have sensitive ecosystems, right? And that is why we also encourage people to rewild. We do that. We are saying, listen, instead of having a fancy lawn, keep some of your lawn, but rewild as well with natural vegetation from the area so that we can start to revive and regrow our local ecosystems. So we are there, you know, whatever comes out today, because I'm a part of a lot of environmental and planning bodies, and I get the material and we go through them and we incorporate them. So if there are any questions, any issues you have, we're here to help you to address it. And we accept all ideas. Our minds are wide open, and the policies, we're willing to put the policies in development orders and other plans as well. Sorry for going on so long. It was a bit fun.
That's fine. We want to hear from you. I just want to see how I can deal with some of this. To the presenters of IDB Invest, how will you address the perception that alternative building materials are inferior to traditional materials? And how will this opportunity for the supply of alternate climate resilient materials materialize if developers continue using traditional building materials? So we're asking two things. How do you address the perception that alternative materials are inferior to traditional? And is there an opportunity for supply? And are the developers continuing to use traditional? That's a kind of a difficult one and requires, but over to you, IDB Invest. Is that you, Chris, or?
Yeah, I will do it. I will do it, Eleanor.
All right.
Yes, it's a complicated question. As I mentioned in my presentation, education and capacity building. How can we understand what are the differences between the materials, what is good and what is bad? You know, that's as they say in the question, that's some perceptive issue. Nevertheless, we rely in certifications. When we are using EDGE, when we are using lead certification, then the system will be in charge of the materials, into addressing the quality of the materials that we'll be using. We don't go so deep in understanding what are the differences from material A to material B. When we finance, we rely on the certification. If the construction has the certification, we understand that the materials that are going to be used are, you know, are top of the art. So we don't go so deep in that. What was the next question, Eleanor?
I think that was it. It was about how can developers continue to use traditional material? How will other? I'm not sure you can answer that, but it's something that's out there.
Yeah. For the moment, we relied, as I mentioned, in the certification. If the project achieves the certification, we will finance it.
And I think it also speaks to, some of this speaks to the point that Heather made about more education and sensitization, so that it's all well and good to say, okay, we're doing this and we're doing that, but the average person And when we're talking education, we have to be targeted and determined. So NEPA perhaps that's something that you can lead on. There's a question also asking, where can we find more information about rainwater storage and usage from NEPA? And there's one that I would really like for us to take or to put on the table. Are there alternative mechanisms for local insurance, for reinsurance? Is there room for the development banks to help create a solution? I don't know, Mr. Smith, if that's something you could speak to.
Certainly I can make a few comments there, Eleanor. Very good question, and it's a challenge that the insurance industry has been trying to overcome for years. Just to put things in context, it's very difficult for us to maintain more of the risk locally because we would have to have an investment fund to keep the money locally, which is generally invested in real estate, which are the same buildings that we're insuring against hurricane and earthquake. So it suits us to use the reinsurers to supply the capital necessary to take the risk. But there have been quite a few initiatives. There's the Caribbean CCRIF, which is the Caribbean Disaster Fund, which a number of the Caribbean states participate in and will provide the government with a substantial amount of funds if we have a loss. And they've added, just plain flooding to that risk exposure. So it's proving to be, or should prove to be, a very good backup plan. But the question of the reinsurance markets, it's an international financial marketplace, and it's very difficult for us at this stage to find cheap alternatives to supply the reinsurance. And that's just one of the basic factors of the current situation.
Okay, we have a hand up from Dayton, our president. Dayton.
Yeah. Just to point out, Jerry had to leave, but he says that he has been in discussions with Swiss reinsurers, trying to set up a special program to assess the actual risk, involved in assessing individual structures. So I think, Tommy, if this comes about, that would be something very, very useful. So you probably want to keep in touch with him on that.
Certainly. A lot of research has been done on our own building standards, the ability to recover after a hurricane. We've made the case very strongly as an industry and as an individual companies over the years to the reinsurers that our building standards are far better certainly than like Florida. So we shouldn't be categorized in that pool, but it still comes back down to just availability of the reinsurance and the price is costing us.
Absolutely. Thank you. And
okay, we have a few more questions in the Q&A, and perhaps in the interest of time, we may go on because there are things that some of these issues that we want to really place on the table. Maybe we do it now. Let's just do it now since we have it. We have one question here. Why is densification being permitted at the urban fence, especially in the KMA, while in other jurisdictions it's done closer to the CBD to restrict travel time and traffic congestion? So it's about traffic planning and so on. So let's just put that on the table and maybe we can come back and address it a little later on. And then we're asking, could we try to promote strong, let's see if we can find this. Can we try to promote more green policies, really? It's a statement. Sustainability and climate resilient development. We could aim to create strong policies for green infrastructure, sponge city concept that ensure that we move towards this greening and resilience. and so on. It's sort of the same thing. Along with the policies, developers and professionals play a strong role, but along with that, good incentives go hand in hand. Then there's another reluctance of overseas insurance to cover the Caribbean. Is it that they have been using Florida? So, well, we spoke to that just now. And then the other one is in the last 12 months, where are we? In the last 12 months, well, there's one that says we have to have a set of graded standards, especially for affordable housing, because of cost implications. These are issues that need to be carried forward, I would think, for further discussion. Squatting is a lot more damaging to the environment and social fabric than relaxed standards for the truly affordable housing. Higher standards can be implemented at the middle and upper income levels, as well as commercial and industrial, within reason. But we have to be careful not to price the product out of the market. That's a very important point. And then there's a question about container homes that are being sold. Are they being touted, and they're being touted as affordable? What would they be approved for local use by NEPA? If we could record that question, NEPA, can you pick that up a little? And then another to Heather and Leonard. There's a lot of talk about encouragement and policy suggestions, but there seems to be limited legal mandates on the design side. I would like to hear from both of you if it's this piece of legislation with teeth that you would suggest to help to encourage or improve climate resilient design and planning. So we have to kind of move on to the next. So if Heather and Leonard, if you could just hold those, and maybe we come back if we have a little space, the panel.
Just let you know, and folks said
The questions that all questions will be answered by the panelists. We'll ask them to answer it, and it will be posted on the website, so that we'll get answers to the questions. But
yes,
we are running short of time. So
yes, very useful questions here that we want to carry on. Okay, so let's thank the panelists. Thank you very much. We have a lot to discuss, a lot to do within a short period of time, but thank you. And thank you, participants, for raising some of these questions and the comments. And as Dayton says, they will all be dealt with, either if we have time here or certainly through the website and for follow-up. So thank you all very much. And we're now going to move into the next section, but then before we do that, we have to just thank our sponsors, because without them, we would not be here. So if we could just move into that, thank you all very much. Stay with us as we continue with this very interesting dialogue.
The National Housing Trust is Jamaica's primary housing developer and mortgage financier. We are inviting experienced housing developers to partner with us in the development of over 3,000 acres of land owned by the NHT across Jamaica.
To find out more about how you can be a part of this important nation-building initiative, email or call us and let us build the future of housing together.
When selling your home, you could take all the photos yourself. But if you have a RE/MAX agent,
Guys, how are you?
they know a team of experts who will get the job done right.
Solutions, support, service, security. DGView Security. See what you've been missing.
Smart AI video analytics with active detection for humans and vehicles, line cross detection, license plate recognition, face recognition, and specialized cameras. Full service providers in surveillance systems, access control, solar lighting, alarm, and smart home systems. Visit dgviewsecurity.com or call 876-906-6528 for more information.
For over 40 years, the Gian Group of companies have been developing plans, laying foundations, building hundreds of homes of distinction, creating exclusive and secure communities in which we live, play, and raise families. The Gian Group of companies, creating homes that people enjoy.
We're back with you. And as we've been talking about the business case, we now want to move into our quantity surveyors segment of today's proceedings. And we're going to be led by our presenter, Mr. Horace Wright. And the thinking here, the theme here is from concept to delivery. So Mr. Wright is going to present for us, and then we will have a panel discussing further. So Mr. Wright has served as president of the Jamaica Institute of Quantity Surveyors and as a member of the Joint Consultative Committee of the Jamaica Master Builders Association. He's a distinguished quantity surveyor and has been secretary and vice president of the Council of Jamaica Institute of Quantity Surveyors. He has had extensive experience as lead quantity surveyor in government joint venture projects funded by international organizations such as the IDB, who is here with us, and World Bank. And he has managed large-scale infrastructure projects and has an impressive portfolio. And interestingly enough, beyond his primary field, he brings a wealth of knowledge in insurance claims, contractual claim preparations, project management, construction management, and he's going to share his insights today on quantity surveying from concept to delivery. Over to you, Mr. Wright.
Good evening again. Good afternoon again. Good afternoon.
Good morning.
Good morning. Going to be talking a bit about the quantity surveyor's role here. Now, most of us must be very, very cognizant of the quantity surveyor's role. Now, the New Zealand Institute of Quantity Surveyors says that they are construction cost professionals who measure and estimate the cost of resources for a construction project. The Canadian Institute of Quantity Surveyors call themselves the construction cost consultants and cost estimators, who make sure that the cost of buildings and infrastructure are accurately measured. Now, the RICS, to whom we are aligned, they describe themselves as the financial guardian of the construction project. Now, whereas I have no problem with the first two descriptions, my preference leans towards the term financial guardian. And as you'll see a little later, or by the time we develop our discussion, so he really is the one who provides the protective coverage of the financial aspects of a project and maintains it from conception to completion and delivery. And he should rightly be, in my mind, the first man in and the last man out. What does a quantity surveyor do? Well, as a guardian, you should be able to provide the protective coverage and maintain it from conception to end. And he is actually trained in technology, best practice. He's also trained in the fundamentals of other disciplines, land surveying, some amount of architecture, engineering, fundamentals, and other stuff. And I'll tell you, in my early years, well, not in my early years, in my most recent years, I had an example of a project that I worked on. We had a wall to build and a retaining wall. It was very costly and outside of the budget. And we stuck around with it and we were toing and froing. And, you know, the engineer gave the estimate, gave the design and I provided the estimate. It was just out of the budget. The client one day just had enough and he came to me and said, listen to me, you are the QS. Get me out of this. Resolve it. I'm a QS, I'm not an engineer. But you know what? I went and did some work, looked at the thing, got the soil examined, and proposed a solution. At the time, it was a combination of gabion and revetment. The engineer actually liked it. And he did his check and he gave the approval and the thing was built. At the time, 10 years ago, the savings was $17 million. So there you are. Now we're trained in construction law, contract law, and other aspects of laws that pertain to legal issues in the construction industry. Matters such as land law and statutory matters. Of course, contract documentation, estimation of projects, and ultimately all the stuff that goes into determining the feasibility of a project. Procurement, methods, tendering, negotiating, so on and so forth. He manages and exercises control over the finances to ensure that the imperatives of the feasibility are maintained throughout the project and ensures cash flow and profitability of projects and so on and so forth. Controlling, managing subcontractors, concluding contracts upon completion of the projects. And I suppose this explains why you should be first in and last out. It is the essence of his role as a financial guardian. He benefits, obviously, the architect and other designers. Now, once feasibility is established, he proceeds to prepare a complete set of budgets and cost estimates that will guide the financial aspect up to the contractual stage into and through the entirety of the construction project. And after that, he does the final accounts. Now, a construction project has pretty much two phases. The first phase is what we call the pre-contract phase, and then you have the post-contract phase. And together they encompass about 6 stages. Today, we're going to look at it from the 2 phases as opposed to the 6 stages. The pre-contract phase. Once the project is conceived, the client would state the project's objective, develop a project proposal outline, and seek to determine viability. At this stage, you would engage the necessary professionals to determine what the expected outcome of the project will be. The amount of buildings, the types of buildings, facilities, and so on. The quantity surveyor will provide the costings necessary to arrive at a preliminary budget and will guide the studies to establish feasibility of the project. Now, if feasibility is established, or at least to be found on the radar, the preliminary designs will be developed by the architects, and from these initial designs, cost checks and cost studies will be done to ensure that it falls within the budgetary parameters. Now, as the designs are developed, we do checks and keep going on until eventually we get to a point where we can develop cost plans to ensure that the final designs accord with the budget. The costings are normally presented in an analytical manner, usually in terms of cost per square feet or square meter. And this will give us some guidance as to where to look for reductions. Now, other things can be discovered at this point. And so it can, direct us to where to make design modifications here or there. And I'll tell you this, I also had another experience again. Well, this one was much early in my profession as a quantity surveyor. I remember having to do a cost study, a cost plan on a warehouse, steel structure warehouse. I remember that. And I presented this document. This is a sample document. I'm going to expand it here. A sample document. But this was a steel frame project. And you see where it says let's set out the various elements and cost per square meter, substructure, frame, walling, and so on. And the frame just stood out. It just stood out. Well, I was young, innocent, and it just sent it off. And after a while, a new set of drawing came. And a new engineer, as it turned out, the original engineer had presented false credentials. He wasn't properly competent. And, it just goes to show the kind of things that a cost plan can unearth. Now, cost studies, finding ways to trim the budget, to refine the budget, or an element that may not necessarily require redesign. Maybe some further studies, methodology, construction process, procurement methods, and sources, construction efficiencies, use of alternative materials and building systems. Yeah. And today, we are not short of those, they have become quite diverse. Now, when all the refinements of the design and considerations are complete and all are satisfied with design and the budget, the project team would now move to developing detailed construction working drawings. And from these working drawings, the quantity surveyor would prepare bills of quantities. And that is that document that breaks down the project into various components, sections and details with descriptions and unit costs, rates, subtotals, and so on to arrive at the final project price. After completion of the design process and the acceptable budget, the process of preparing the bills of quantities is embarked on, and the accuracy of the bills of quantities are necessary. When I say accuracy, the accuracy needs to be really high. It has to be extremely high, 98%, 99%, and beyond. To do that, sorry, we sometimes have to add provisional sums to account for things that are not yet known at the time. And the provisional sums are good projections and usually fall within the budget. We don't usually end up with a provisional sum that is irrelevant. Now, assuming that by now the concept developed is now viable, financing is sourced, and the procurement process is decided on, tendering, negotiation, whether it's selective tendering, open tendering, and so on. And the detailed working drawings are done and so on. Now, let's talk about the bills of quantities a little. The bills of quantities is that formal document that is known to be the main aspects of the contract documents. The drawings are also contract documents and schedules and stuff, but the main document is the bills of quantities, because the actual bill of quantities refers to the other documents and ties them in descriptive ways. It is comprised of 4 sections: the preliminary items and conditions of contract, specifications, measured works, and appendices. The preliminary items, let me go back a little. The preliminary items is contained, they are contained in a section of the bills of quantity, usually the first section, and it contains the contractual obligations necessary to execute the project. It includes special conditions and conditions of application and references to the form of contract to be used. Often we use a standard form of contract, modified as necessary. It also provides for pricing of items pertaining to the work that do not become a part of the finished and permanent work. We're talking about things like scaffolding, insurances, supervision, plant, equipment, things that don't remain when the building is finished. Then the next section is the specification. The specification section is the part of the document that is descriptive. It expands those annotations and notes on the sets of drawings and verbalizes them, organizing them in such ways to ensure that the qualitative imperatives are understood. These are the same qualitative imperatives that has to be met during construction. So it may make reference to standards of material, labor, and whatever necessary works to make it compliant with the drawing. Now, they also provide clarity for the purpose of tendering and negotiation and make references to local and international building standards, codes, testing methods, and other necessary credible product information to ensure the finished product is exactly as the engineers, architects, and all the designers intend. A well-done set of specifications should promote good compliance and result in minimum misunderstandings, disputes, and contractual claims. And I tell you, there are still construction companies that have a claims department that do conniving stuff. Go into the document to look for loopholes to regain any discount they may have given in the process of tendering. Still happens. Then you have the measured work section. This is the section of the bill of quantity that breaks down the buildings into what is known as elements, for example, foundations, frame, roof, doors, etc. Each element is further broken down into measurable items. We're talking about units now, square meters, linear meters, cubic meters, and so forth, and priced accordingly. The totals are then cast into summaries, and then to a general summary to arrive at the final contract sum. Again, the accuracy level of this measured work section must be extremely high. And it brings into focus the expertise of the quality surveyor. Where the exact details are unknown, again, as I mentioned earlier, profit or subs are used. It has appendices necessary to complete properly prepared bills of quantities. And these includes the basis on which the contract rates were derived or would be derived by the tenderer or the negotiator. Such basic price includes material basic prices, labor plans, and equipment, and sometimes rate of currency exchange. But these things become necessary in the event of fluctuation claims. Fluctuation claims basically is compensation for movement in prices beyond provided for in the contract, and things like foreign exchange. Often we put limits, perhaps has to move beyond a certain percentage before you can make a claim. Now, the invitation to tender. Tenders are normally invited if negotiation is not pursued. And usually, the lowest tender is accepted, providing it is responsive. So it is not guaranteed that the lowest tender will be accepted, but it has to meet the conditions to be compliant, and it has to be genuinely competitive. In other words, it cannot be unbalanced. It cannot be priced in such a way that after 10% of the work, the contractor is paid 20% of the money. It has to be balanced. So after the tenders are received and opened, they are evaluated to ensure compliance, to ensure balance, and reported upon to the team. And that pretty much will end the pre-contract phase, assuming the contract is accepted and signed. So this is what the team looks like. At pre-contract stage. And at the post-contract stage, it changes. The role of the quality surveyor moves down and he responds to the architects, the project manager, and the contractor and the subcontractors below. Now, the post-contract phase involves monthly or periodic interim valuations where the conservator goes on site, values the work at a particular point, and payment is made in agreement with the contract, in accordance with the contract, sorry. It's called cost control. Variations will come, they will come about, and legitimate ones. The legitimate ones are priced and included in the monthly certificate. And while all this is done, interim periodic cost reporting is done. We do reports saying where we are with money, where we ought to be with money, and verify that at the end we will be on budget. Yes, claims arise from time to time, and when they do, we assess them too and pay for them in a timely manner. And in the end, we prepare the final accounts. Now, there are other services that could become necessary during the project and after the project. One of the things that come to mind is the preparation of repair and maintenance work schedules. Assessment of the claims, other claims. And we're talking about all sorts of claims, including insurance claims. Yes, sometimes things happen and we have to pay claims. Sometimes claims are made against the client because of things that happen. We have to assess those things as they arise. And so on. There's also the matter of litigation support. Sometimes it has to do with the project, and sometimes just in the life of a quantity surveyor, where we give lawyers and the courts support. But that's pretty much it. I trust I was contained within the 25 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. You gave a very clear presentation of the role of the quantity surveyor and certainly the structure. Where you have other designers, you lump everybody together there. I would like to see, especially in the light of we're talking climate resilience and sustainability, that perhaps we begin to consider as the architects and the engineers come together, you do have the sustainability professionals in there, be the environment, climate resilience, disaster risk, so that we are integrating everything at the early stage, the pre-contract stage. I think that would be beginning to carry forward some of what we have been talking about. So let's now move to the panel. Thank you very much, Mr. Wright. I know you'll be there and we'll take some questions as we go. We have three panelists who will know, two quantity surveyors, as I see, and and a professional engineer who is Donald Moore with an NHT, and then we have Mr. Carr managing partner Davidson and Hannah, and we have which one? Michael, yes, Mr. Michael Robinson. I had him here on the top. Thank you. Okay, so if you could open your mics, Mr. Robinson, Mr. Moore, and Mr. Carr. Michael Robinson, quantity surveyor, principal of Michael Robinson Associates, been in existence since 1988, and they're quantity surveyors and project managers for specializing in cost control, cost management, project management. What we heard from Mr. Wright as financial guardians, and we had a discussion, Mr. Robinson, with this over 60 years of combined professional experience, comprehensive services, including preliminary construction, cost advice, feasibility studies, and so on. Then we have Mr. Moore, professional engineer and consultant, pioneer in civil engineering and construction. And here we have 45 years. So we have persons here with lots of years of experience, planning and construction of Emancipation Park, Mr. Moore, and managing the Clarendon Newtowns design competition, which was quite a trailblazer too. You joined the National Housing Trust in 1992, and you're now serving as Senior General Manager for the Construction and Development Division, focusing on housing delivery and optimizing the division's performance.
Correction, Elena, I'm now retired.
Oh my,
and
you are
Brian
now retired.
Brian will speak later, so you will see the new Senior General Manager of Construction and Development.
I see, my apologies. Well, you're retired, okay. Well, I suppose that's why you call yourself a consultant now.
All right.
Okay, all right, and then Mr. Carr, are you retired too, Mr. Carr? No, you're much younger than Mr. Moore, I can see.
Very much so, Eleanor. Very much so. I'm not yet so privileged.
So you're the managing partner of Davidson and Hannah, and also chartered quantity surveyors with over 30 years experience in the field. Pivotal role in shaping iconic developments that have significantly impacted Jamaica's real estate landscape. You are a director at Proven Properties, and you have brought your expertise to various strategic initiatives. Your professional journey marked by dedication to high standards in quantity surveying and contributions to prestigious projects and boards. All right, so Mr. Carr, I'm going to start with you. Yes. Just you heard Mr. Wright present the role of the quantity surveyor, and in the light of what we have been talking about, I wonder if you could speak about some of what you have done and whether you have in fact brought to bear climate resilience thinking, environmental due diligence, how you work, because your quantity surveyors over the years, some have taken it under advisement, some have paid more attention to the strict sort of letter. Can you share with us some of your perspective, and then we will come to Mr. Robinson and then Mr. Moore.
Thank you, Eleanor, and very good morning, I think it is, but it's afternoon now.
Yes, it's afternoon now.
Yourself, all who is online, it's very pivotal what the JDA has done. I think it's a very useful webinar, and we hope it will bring, some sort of perspective that, climate impact on our industry is very, very significant and is happening. I want to thank my colleague, quantity surveyor Horace, for a detailed overview and the role of us quantity surveyors in projects. Very well done, sir. You represented us well, and I'm indeed happy to be a part of this. Michael, good to see you. Just want to share and continue on what Horace is saying in the involvement of the quantity surveyor. And I like the fact when you look at the chart that the quantity surveyor is very, very instrumental at the top. And I think it is profound that that is so, because our insight and contribution must be at the inception stage. We bring knowledge, expertise, and experience
in how the development of a project can be and should be. In that, we can make suggestions, especially in what our subject here is, in terms of climate resilient type of buildings. So what my contribution has been over the years in the recent past, which we have spoken about, in the previous presentation, methodologies as to how we can improve our aspect of our building. Now, we have found that the developers are so into capitalizing on density. They're about profit making. And as surveyors, we understand the bottom line, dollars. What I've tried to do in my involvement is to encourage more green spaces, as we have spoken about. We try to get involved in the design stage to advise and to try to instruct the architect to ensure materials that are reusable, materials that are sustainable, be part of the design. And it is my philosophy that it is not about the price, it is about the value. At the end of the day, we want the end users to have a product that they can benefit from. It reduces costs in terms of the energy type materials that we can use. And so at the end of the day, it is always cheaper first time around, no matter what the price is. Don't look at it, because the reusing of materials, the replacement cost may impact you in the final. We have a presentation with respect to insurances, and I always mention this, that the type of development, depending on the design, will reduce your replacement cost insurance premium. So we want to ensure that we have a product that benefits all. So water harvestation that we spoke about, the use of solar panels for external lighting is very, very useful and should be considered when being designed. I also try to encourage even infrastructure, what we'll call facilities for solar by the end users, where they can put panels in themselves to reduce energy costs when they actually take possession of their units or their homes. So we think that it should be mandatory now. I know the National Environmental Planning Authority director has spoken about policies, and we encourage that at the table, when these things are reviewed for approvals, that suggestions are made to the designers that try to use sustainable materials that can benefit all. It is very important that we look at what, where the zone that we're in. We're exposed to hurricanes, especially this time of the year, and we want to have less impact so that people are not displaced when, should some eventuality take place. My contribution has always been to look at these factors when we are designing, and we try to provide cost comparisons to show the benefit of it in the long run. And we have seen where it has materialized and it's being adopted, and we hope that this will continue, because in the long run, we want sustainable building, sustainable environment. I think that is what my contribution has been over the years, Eleanor, and it is working. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Carr. Kevin. All right. Shall we go now to Mr. Robinson? If just give us some quick insight to expand on Mr. Wright's position, and again, bringing in the theme and the focus of today's deliberations, the resilience and so on.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me here. Congrats to Horace on a very good presentation. And after Kelvin, I don't know if there's much for me to say. Yeah, he has really covered most of the ground. But from my perspective, one of my concerns is that, and coming from way back In the earlier days, quantity surveyors were more involved in the initial planning stage and the cost planning of projects. That's not so anymore. We get the project when it is already completely designed. And essentially what we do is what we call post-mortem. We can only tell you what the cost is going to be. We cannot advise you how to get it done anymore, because by that time, the client would have absorbed the design. The client would have wanted that design, even though it doesn't fit his budget. And by the time we come up with the figure, we're the bad guys, because we're coming up with costs that is not in keeping with what the client was expecting. So I say that to say that there has been a trend over the past 10, 15 years to move away from using the quantity surveyor early in the design stage, so that we can plan together. We can give the advice that we have all that experience coming back from way back when. And I can say that I have seen the trend moving into certain type of material, which when we get a good hurricane, I am concerned about what we're doing. Because the type of roofing, for example, and my experience, and I really started out the same year as Gilbert came here. And I did an extensive amount of valuation and insurance valuations after the hurricane. And most of the roofs that peeled off and disappear of people's houses are the ones that we're crazy about now. The metal sheeting and the roofs that stood up, the fiberglass shingle, the clay tile roof, the Decrabond style, smaller tile area, tile type roof are the ones that are being left aside more and more. So in terms of climate, I think we're just going on with a modern trend. The windows, we're using a lot of these large, nice, beautiful PVC or aluminum frame windows that slides left and slides right and vertically, but they're made from large panes of glass, even though you see these strips on them that give the indication that they are small panes. And so French windows, louver windows are much safer and better in a hurricane situation, which we are exposed to. And we seem to have forgotten that and go for style rather than substance. With respect to quantity surveying, we are not being utilized in the way that we should be utilized. Quantity surveyors are probably the most multifaceted member of the construction consulting team. And I say that without any apology. We have to understand what the architect does. We have to know and understand to a great extent what the engineer does. We are also trained in structural engineering. We can't go and get a registered engineer accreditation, but we know sufficient and adequate amount to be able to even advise our engineer when we think something is missing, when we think something is not properly reinforced, because it comes with experience. And we have that level of expertise, tried and proven, that we can apply. But we're not being utilized like that. We're seen as a BQ preparer. We just prepare a BQ and we trump up a price. The other area that I think we're not recognizing, and I don't think a lot of our colleagues even, much less the public, understand what we do. And I say that because when someone gives you a drawing and want it back in a week, they tell you they don't know what we do. They don't know the detail, the level of detail that we have to go into, measurement, calculations, the construction of prices and rates is a very comprehensive and detailed exercise. It's not just a flick of the finger, give you a price per square foot thing. I, for one, don't advise clients based on area square foot prices. We don't do that. We go into detailed measurement, right? So I think the time has come for us to look back at how we utilize our professionals, particularly the quantity surveyor, because let's face it, cost somewhere along the line of a design, of a development, the money is the pivotal factor. And if we can save as we go along on economies of scale, on the type of material we use, the better use material, and let me add, the quantity surveyor is trained in the chemistry of materials and which material is to be used when and where. For example, on the seaside, nowadays, we are using any type of nail on a coastal development, ordinary galvanized nail. The quantity surveyor knows which is the right nail to use, and we often write the specifications, even though that's not really our duty, but we do. We end up with writing specifications. So we have to understand these things, and we have to advise, but we can't advise you when the die is already cast and the project is designed and has already been approved. We only come in at the back end, and we can only tell you that it's a post-mortem exercise, and we can only pronounce on the project at that time, not advise. That is my perspective based on the whole theme from inception to completion.
Very important points. Thank you. Thank you very much for that. Okay, so we have some questions. I'm going to put them on the table now before we just move on to Mr. Moore. Because again, it comes back to this business of integration and really some new thinking that needs to take place. And one question is asked, what percentage of the budget is allocated to landscaping? My experience is that often it is zero, or that it is the first item to be cut to reduce cost. With climate change, landscaping is extremely important for carbon sequestration, biodiversity protection, flood control, among others. Can at least 10 to 15% of the budget be allocated to landscaping? So we're putting that on the table. And the other point is that the sustainability partners are an important partner to include in the early stages to mitigate climate change effects and essentially realize more sustainable buildings and development. There are many green elements that should become the norm and perhaps mandatory through government development policies. Is it that landscaping or greening is still seen as beautification or a non-essential part of the development process? This is a question for the QS and for NEPA. So we have these on the table. Mr. Moore, and we're going to call you in next. You can either comment on these and then, or we come back to our quantity surveyors, or we can come back to anyone else who would like to perhaps raise their hands from the audience. So, Mr. Moore, can we invite you to give your perspective?
Okay, good afternoon, Elena, and thank you. Thank Horace and thank everybody. Hello. Thank Horace for quite interesting presentation, and Kelvin, and especially Michael for your intervention. It was on point. It is as a representative of the client for most of my years, and also an engineer, I do appreciate the direction from which Michael came. And when Horace spoke about being the guardian, the financial guardian of the project, that is, I would admit, been in a sense missing in a lot of our projects. And I'm talking about right across the board. I was doing some research on cost overrun, and one of the issues that came up is and I think the research said that 30% of failure in project was due to lack of proper communication. And I think if it is that we are going to have the arrangements that we tend to have now in almost all projects that we have, where we put teams together, we don't, in a sense, get someone who is interested in just watching the numbers, making sure that client is protected, all professionals and the outcomes are closer to what the intention was. It's a matter that we have looked at, the issue of estimating, and especially estimating in the environment that we are in now. Yes, the dollar has been relatively stable over the last few years, but of course there's significant volatility in the materials market, the issue of labor availability, the kind of skills that are out there, how you can properly estimate for what the contractors will need to go through in getting their work done. The matter of alternative methods of construction. It's something we spoke about earlier. The minister spoke about it. I think the IDB had an area in their on their slide where they spoke about concrete being one of the preferred methods of our materials to be used in construction for different reasons. Of course, in a hurricane zone, you can understand that. Of course, Jamaica being in an earthquake zone, then there's an issue there on the other side. So these are all things that the QS would be competent to take into account and to advise the clients on. And I do agree that as you look around, we are missing that voice. Early, say first in, Horace, and last out. We're missing the voices early. And it is something that I think we need to look at. But the QS themselves need to step up to the plate. You need to bring to the fore why it is important for you to be there early, what value you are going to be adding to the process. It won't happen without that. And also when we talk about cost overrun, we don't hear the voices of the people who are supposed to be skilled in the area coming in and speaking on those matters. So that's my contribution for the time being, Helen.
Thank you very much, Donald. Very strong case for the engagement of the quantity surveyors, and it is excellent that the Developers Association has brought this component to the dialogue, because we're opening up a whole new area, a new perspective, or of the need for traditional professionals, because the quantity surveyors, I think, used to be far more engaged in long days of yore, and now, as the point is, we're going, Kelvin made the point, we're going on to profit making, density, etc. And really, if we're talking sustainability, sustainability meaning, are we ensuring that our investments are protected? Are we making the best? Are we adding value, both for ourselves as investors and for our clients? A lot of issues here. And perhaps the Developers Association and the quantity surveyors may want to carry this issue further, because we have some significant points that have been raised. Let me just see if there are any other questions in the, yes, Dayton, would you like to come in here?
Yes, thanks, and I'd just like to thank Mr. Wright and the panelists here. And one of the reasons why we have asked the quantity surveyors to be here today is just for that reason. First in, last out. The difficulty, of course, that developers would have is that in a lot of instances, we don't have a design when we're looking to purchase property. For instance, we have a concept in mind, but we don't have a design. And in order to get napkin type discussions going, we need some ballpark figures. And I know that Michael doesn't like giving anybody a ballpark figure unless he sees the actual drawings. But we need to have a balance.
Not necessarily so.
Yeah, well, okay, fine. But we need that initial balance. But could the quantity surveyors give us some guidelines as to building materials that we could use? There are a number of people using, people talking about using hemp blocks instead of concrete blocks, types of roofing to be used, insulation to be used, drainage systems to be put in place. Is there some type of research that could guide the developers and the Master Builders Association and architects generally about this, or maybe it's a combined project that we need to do with the architects, engineers, quantity surveyors to get together and do a review of what is available internationally and locally, so that we have a list of best products, best practices that we could say, well, you can take a pick of one of these items for yourself. See, a different type of building block, different type of windows, insulation for your roof, and so on. I don't know if that's possible.
Okay, can I just respond to that?
Sure.
Firstly, Dayton, I am not saying that I don't like to give ballpark figures, the very term ballpark, because I have developed feasibility studies for projects without any drawing whatsoever, just by sitting down with the client, doing area analysis, using my cost analysis data that I have in the office. What I'm talking about is someone picking up the phone and calling you to listen, I'm doing a development, it's 10,000 square feet, how much a square foot to build it? I'm not a magician, I'm a quantity surveyor. We use science, mathematics, statistics to calculate figures. So because the first time the figure is wrong, you're gonna hear, but I got that figure from X quantity surveyor. So out of an abundance of caution, yes, we do create costs from very basic information. And there was a market program, to give you an anecdotal example. When the World Bank market program was being done, I was at another place as a young quantity surveyor. I was given a single sheet of drawing, letter size, with a layout, and I was asked to prepare a BQ with it. I generated that BQ, and the architect that gave me that was at the Public Works at the time. And I created a BQ, and then I advised him as to what items I had in it. And he created his drawing, final drawing from what I did. That World Bank program generated 16 schools using that modular BQ to do it. So I can cut it any which way with my training and experience. But don't call me on a telephone and want me to give you a figure for two reasons. One, I can't call my attorney and ask him to defend me on the phone. Neither can I call my doctor. We need to be treated as professionals. And rough, you can give somebody an idea, but I don't want that figure to be used. Now, going back to the research part of it, I think that type of research should be driven through the University of Technology. And we as quantity surveyors have often asked the University of Technology, I personally have done it, to do a research into a cost database where everybody can be on the same page. Because the British Cost Information System, when I was in the UK, we didn't vary much because everybody is coming from the same basic cost. You can get the cost of something easy. Now, as a quantity surveyor, you have to call on hardware every day you're pricing a document. You have to pick up a phone and sit down and call this hardware, that hardware, and they're gonna tell you, I don't give more than 3 costs over the phone. So you have to cost 50 hardware if you're pricing a tender. They no longer send you a price list. You can't get that anymore. Back in the day, I could call different suppliers and I get a long price list that is usually stay relevant for a couple of days or a couple of weeks or even a couple of months. But nowadays, you call today and the price changes tomorrow. So the quantity surveyor's job is made that much more difficult in being accurate. But we sit on it. We almost have a department just to make phone calls for prices and update our database. So the research has to be done, but I don't think you're going to get it done either through the master builders nor through the JIQS. It has to be done through the academic approach in collaboration. We can sponsor it. All of us together, the Construction Industry Council, which is something a body that we don't speak about a lot, but that is the body that embraces all the professionals in the industry and should be looked to more often, together with the University of Technology, to guide this research into costing, into new materials that can be used rather than we use in fashion to design building, rather than technology of what we're using, style and fashion, rather than substance and durability.
Well, thanks.
Dayton, to follow up on your question in terms of building materials, we have found, as Michael has mentioned, the movement of materials prices is so frequent. And what we've found as surveyors is that lumber is one of the most costly materials in our industry. And maybe we could have a discussion with our designers, you know, the Incorporated Master Builders Association, the players in the market, to probably look towards laminated timber as an alternative. It is sustainable. It's very, it's something new that we'd have to you know, demonstrate to our industry. But I think it's something that collectively we should look towards, and it could very well reduce cost of construction. It's not immediately available, but if we can demonstrate that and show that it can be effective, it could be something that is worth investing in reducing our cost of construction in terms of sustainability. I think it's a worthwhile thing to look at, and architects, engineers to look into it and see. Talk about material, one of them, or it's recycled plastic in terms of what it generate, the manufacturing of different types of windows. Michael spoke to louver windows. It could be a way of manufacturing that, reduce heat, encourage cooling, and so surgical reduced. So yeah, it's an innovative phase that we're in, and we know have to be on top of.
Thank you very much. Mr. Wright, is that your hand up? I saw a hand up from the audience. Is that Angela Johnson? Are you there? Can you open your mic? If you are, we would take your contribution now. I'm just seeing that. Are you there? Not seeing it? Maybe we have lost her then. Hand just remains up. And then is that you, Mr. Wright, you have your hand up?
Yes.
Okay.
I would like to encourage us that all is not lost. There are some clients that I have that are keen on the environment. The last project I did, there was a major water harvesting system that was put in. But my long-term client is particularly keen on the environment. That client makes a big deal out of landscaping. And I tell you, I think he's on this mix too. I've seen that particular client go down the entire road. If he goes into a community and he doesn't like what he sees, he will go down the entire road and landscape it up. And I've seen it time and time again. It's all is not lost. There are some among us who have that kind of pride.
Okay, so thank you all very much, Quantity Surveyors, introducing new materials, new application of the science, proper integration, and I'm sure these are matters that will be carried on by the developers. So, okay, let's move on now. Thank you so much, and we're going to now move to Mr. Brian Saunders, but I think before that we have sponsors, please.
When selling your home, you could take all the photos yourself. But if you have a RE/MAX agent,
guys, how are you?
They know a team of experts who will get the job done right.
Solutions, support, service, security. DGView Security. See what you've been missing.
Smart AI video analytics with active detection for humans and vehicles, line cross detection, license plate recognition, face recognition, and specialized cameras. Full service providers in surveillance systems, access control, solar lighting, alarm, and smart home systems. Visit dgviewsecurity.com or call 876-906-6528 for more information.
For over 40 years, the Gian Group of companies have been developing plans, laying foundations, building hundreds of homes of distinction, creating exclusive and secure communities in which we live, play, and raise families. The Gian Group of companies, creating homes that people enjoy.
The National Housing Trust is Jamaica's primary housing developer and mortgage financier. We are inviting experienced housing developers to partner with us in the development of over 3,000 acres of land owned by the NHT across Jamaica.
To find out more about how you can be a part of this important nation-building initiative, email or call us and let us build the future of housing together.
And now we'd like to invite Mr. Brian Saunders, Senior General Manager, Construction and Development from the National Housing Trust, to join us with a platinum sponsor presentation. The NHT is a platinum sponsor, and so he's going to tell us something about partnership opportunities by way of the NHT's development program. Mr. Saunders, are you there?
I am here.
Okay.
Good afternoon, all.
Not seeing you though.
I have turned on the camera. I guess
Oh, there you are. We're seeing you now.
Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Let me just start sharing. Share here. And switch this to the presentation mode.
Nice to meet you, Mr. Saunders. You were introduced to us by your predecessor a few minutes ago.
Right, right.
So welcome.
Thanks very much for that, Sir Moore. We have a presentation here to outline to those that are here. First, let me thank the initiative here where all the stakeholders can come together in a forum like this to exchange and discuss these matters that are crucial to development in Jamaica. The NHT being one of the premier developers, we were excited at the opportunity to partner, being our theme in this endeavor, because the intention ultimately is to stimulate the housing market through partnership, where we have two initiatives that we really want to present and help to get out there to help in the achievement of our mandate in terms of ultimately boosting the housing stock in Jamaica and providing achievable housing and furthering the government's initiative for commencing over 70,000 solutions by 2027. Our initiatives for solving the housing problem on our side includes a number of initiatives. We have the NHT scheme program where we design the housing solutions and engage consultants to design the infrastructure. And we implement those by way of our standard tender process in keeping with the GOJ procurement. The new initiative that we started in recent times, the Guaranteed Purchase Program, we term it the GPP, and most recently the Developers Program. We had revisited that one, and we call it the DP. The community renewal program is one that involves us working in inner cities in some parts, or doing redevelopment of spaces that would have been informally occupied. And then we also have the joint venture partnership that we partner with private sector as well as our partners in government, and then the interim finance program. But the aim here will really be presenting the guaranteed purchase program and the developers program, which both are initiatives by the NHD to partner with developers in order to solve the housing demand that we have as our significant mandate. Under the guaranteed purchase program, however, the partnership is with private sector developers who have a design or an idea or a development plan for a parcel of land, and then we partner with them by virtue of giving a commitment, providing that the development satisfy a number of criteria that is available on our website to purchase all or a portion of those solutions based on agreed price point. And under the developers program, a similar program where we now allow persons, developers to submit proposals rather. Sorry, let me just move that. Invite developers to submit proposal for the development of housing solution on lands owned by the NHD. This program is aimed at encouraging involvement of the private sector developers towards low-income housing solutions. The developer in this case is fully responsible for financing the development, including the planning, design, the construction, and marketing their portion of it, and the sale for those. The NHD would now be responsible for marketing and sale of all the units that they have and purchasing the units once they have been completed. The eligibility requirements that are here, ultimately completing the application form and the permission form, submitting performance record for at least 10 years, audited financial statements for the last 3 years, completing a fit and proper form, registration with the company's office or the real estate board, and submitting copies of title. The last two would primarily be focused on those that want to partner under the guaranteed purchase program. The responsibility of the developers under the developers program would be to manage the project in undertaking the designs, obtaining all the requisite approvals, and undertaking the construction work, financing the development in its entirety, sell all the units, 80% of the units rather, to the NHD at the agreed purchase price, market and sell the 20% of the solution that we allow to the general public. The NHD responsibility would be to evaluate the proposal once they are received, at least to invite the proposal firstly, and then evaluate once we get those in keeping with the guidelines that we have. And then ultimately, once you are accepted and approved, then we'd allow you access to the NHD land, providing that you submit the requisite securities to use the land to facilitate the financing towards the development. Under the guaranteed purchase program, similar to the developers program, you're still responsible for doing all the designs, obtaining all the approvals, so on and so forth, providing all the finances required for the project, and ultimately to hand over the development to the requisite approval agencies as well, including the Parish Council for the Road and Infrastructure, NWC for sewage treatment plants if those are there, and the water supply the NHG responsibility would be to purchase the units, as was the initial part of the agreement, and evaluate proposals once they are received and take those through our approval process and formulate the agreement to get the projects underway. So far, the number of solutions that we have had is scattered all over the island, with some parishes yet to be involved, and we're taking this opportunity to present the program and invite the interest so that we can now populate the rest of the maps, the map that doesn't have these dots on there, the blue signifying the guaranteed purchase program, and the orange signifying where we have the developers program development so far. So far for the developers program, we have 9,400 housing solutions being a part of this program, and we have gotten approval all the way through to cabinet for 5,100 housing solutions. The tables below demonstrates the parishes within which the developments fall. The first 5, which is on the left-hand side, outlines those that we have approved and ready to start the designs, and in another couple of months. Those are in the parish of St. James, St. Elizabeth, Trelawney, St. Mary, and Manchester. We are currently inviting proposal for those that are numbered 6 to 14, which are in Kingston, St. Catherine, and Bromley. But these as well are available on our website. I'll give you an email address at the end of the presentation where we will invite queries and respond to those once we receive them. The guaranteed purchase program, this involves over 6